16th Planning Commission meeting. First up, well, thank you all for joining in this rain. I'm sure it was a fun time getting here, but we appreciate it. So first up, we will review and approve the agenda. I think we are proposing a change to the agenda. We're just going to move the station project to the bottom, bring up Simrat, and bring up Jacqueline White, each to do one, just out of respect for folks' time, because we know that the station project will probably be a pretty robust conversation, which I'm looking forward to, but we'll save that, a little treat for us. So that would be my one amendment to the agenda before we approve. Any other discussion on the agenda? Any motions concerning the agenda?
Move to approve as amended.
Second.
All right, John moved and Charles seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed? Abstentions? All right, motion carries. Thank you. Next up, we will review and approve the minutes from our last meeting, February 17th, 2026. Any discussion on the minutes?
I move that we approve.
Second.
All right, Charles moved to approve and John seconded. Any discussion? No. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? And I will abstain because I was not here and don't know if they're accurate. But the motion carries. All right, so first we come to our first public comment of the evening. Now, we ask that this public comment is restricted to items on the agenda, and we ask that you would limit your comments to 5 minutes. So if you'd like to make a comment, please just get up to the podium, state your name, and then go ahead. All right, everyone's saving it for the end. So no public comment for items on the agenda. And we'll move to our first item, which is now the Simrat LLC 351 East Water Street extension request. John, do you want to start us off with that?
Yes, just one moment while I pull it up. I apologize. This is always a little fun trying to manipulate this thing. Okay. So this is a request for a subdivision land development plan. It's been on the radar for the Planning Commission for a while now. There is a requirement that the board or the commission either grant an extension or act upon the item at this evening's meeting. We have identified a number of general comments. In terms of the I guess I can kick this over to Chad to begin the discussion with engineering comments on the actual subdivision by itself, but we have also received county comments associated with the development. As you will recall, the initial development was a little bit different than as it's now proposed. It's now 2 townhomes, generally designed 6 units per each structure, and then a number of parking spaces in a parking lot right here as identified on the screen. The staff, in consultation with the borough solicitor, did have a determination made regarding this parking lot arrangement as it relates to the zoning ordinance and parking lot design requirements and accessibility parking spaces. Accessible parking spaces are required for this development per that determination from the solicitor. So a change will have to happen, or they would have to seek a variance as it is a zoning ordinance issue. Otherwise, I'll turn things over to the borough engineer.
Good evening. So before I get into some of the comments, first maybe I will introduce, I see Chris Robinstein from Hanover Land is here. He is representing the plan, so might have some correspondence back and forth with him. And I believe the gentleman beside you there, Chris, I'm not, could you introduce yourself, please? So if there's any questions about anything, those two may chime in during that discussion. I just have a couple of comments on my letter that I'm going to go over. There is a separate stormwater management review that was done for this, and of course we have a stormwater authority. So all of those go to the stormwater authority. That's where a lion's share of the comments are tonight. I cut to the chase. My recommendation at the end of this meeting is going to be that we table the plan until they get through all these comments. They haven't revised the plan since they've received our comments because they were just basically waiting for those stormwater management comments. So now that they have those comments, they'll be able to go through, do a clean resubmittal, and then I believe next month we'll be in a better position to be able to push this thing ahead. So that's just kind of cutting to the chase here with this. But I'll go through my comments here, my Saldo related comments. The first one I just mentioned again, that there's a separate stormwater review being done. The first 4 comments on my letter refer to outside agencies. So they need to get a HOP permit from Robbie Harbaugh, our Public Works Department. They need to get Gettysburg Municipal Authority to review and approve. They need to get the fire chief to review and approve. So there's a couple of things, and like I said, the stormwater authority as well. So there's some outside agency reviews that are still in the process. Number 8 on my letter, and that's something I wanted to touch on. So John, if you'll go to the southwest corner of the property, you'll see there's a stormwater pipe that goes around that cuts through the property. And they're essentially cutting that pipe and rerouting it to get around that last unit. And John, if you would fast forward to the landscaping plan, that same location on the landscaping plan, you'll see how that kind of impacts the buffer yard a little bit. That goes hand in hand with this comment. So one of the recommendation that I provided in my letter is, if you're going to the trouble of relocating this thing, why do it cross property lines? Why not move that pipe entirely? It's the neighbor's pipe, essentially. It's Spectracoat's pipe. Why not just move it entirely onto the neighbor's property to keep the property rights clean? There's no easement. And then you can have the proper trees and buffer yard that wraps around the corner of the property. Now I want to kick this all over maybe to Chris to respond to that, to see what he thinks about that recommendation. I gather that one of the issues is and I would agree with this, by the way. I would agree that we should try to avoid NPDS if we can. NPDS is the National Pollution Discharge Elimination System permitting that goes through the Adams County Conservation District, and it's a bear. It's a significant amount of work, time, money. They're right up against. You had to get a permit for that once you go over an acre of disturbance. So they're right up against that acre, and I'm guessing that's part of the reason why that this is designed like it is. So I don't want to speak out of turn. So Chris, do you have any thoughts on being able to reroute that pipe off of the property?
Yeah, that's probably 50% of the check. The other part of it probably would be that the further we move the relocation of the old pipe and replace it with the new pipe, the longer we extend then the run of the pipe, which you potentially run into some issues with slope and fall and things like that by lengthening the amount of pipe that you're going to install. And then lastly, there's a lot of other utilities happening right there at that corner where there's sanitary sewer laterals, there's the relocated water lateral that also runs across this property. So just a lot going on right there. We thought, if we kept, it's not that big a deal, if we keep the storm sewer on this developer's property, it's not a conflict with all the other utilities that are right there as well. So it's kind of a multitude of reasons why we chose the location that we chose to kind of avoid disturbance, the other utilities, and then still being able to have plenty of fall from one end to the other.
So it sounds to me like, Chris, if I'm summarizing your position there, you'd like to keep it the way it is. You'd like to not have to make that change. Is that accurate? Or do you need do you need a chance to take a look at it a little bit further?
We did locate the actual invert elevations to the best that we could of the existing 12-inch pipe. So I do want to look at that first. And I don't know that I would be opposed to even sliding it a little bit further towards the rear of the property line, so we can make some kind of reinforcement landscaping there. I don't think that's an issue. But it's really just trying to, balance all of those different variables in this particular situation.
So unless the planning commission has any input on that item, maybe we can leave it that you're gonna take a look at it, see if there's anything you can do better there to try to get that pushed over a little bit, maybe get some additional landscaping around the back of the building, and we'll pick it up from there. Do you guys have any other thoughts on that before I move on?
Doesn't seem like it, no.
Number 11 on my review letter was about a waiver being requested. That is for the material that's being used for the sidewalk. The ordinance says it has to be concrete. The neighboring sidewalk, because it was widened from 5 feet to 8 feet, was installed with asphalt. So they would like to do asphalt across the face of this property to match the neighboring sidewalk, and that would require a waiver. So it looks like a brick pattern on the plans, but it's not being proposed as brick. It's essentially asphalt. It's blacktop. So I know I had brought this up in previous meetings. At some point, you'll need to vote on that waiver. If you're prepared to vote on that tonight, I can pause now for that decision. That'll help the applicant finalize that discussion. Or if you want to wait for next month, that's fine too.
Just make sure I'm looking at the right letter. What letter are you referencing right now? The Stormwater Management Plan review?
No. So the letter that's in your file is the stormwater plan. The plan review letter didn't make it to your packet, so you don't have. I mean, it was submitted to John. I think it was sent from my secretary. He didn't, and not me, and it got stuck in the.
So can you just repeat number 11 again?
So I'll read it. It says.
Thanks.
Sidewalks at locations other than driveway crossings shall consist of a minimum of 4 inches of Portland cement concrete, underlain with minimum of 4 inches of compacted gravel or crushed stone. The applicant proposes asphalt trail consistent with the neighboring Blue Mountain Group Shippensburg development. The applicant has submitted a waiver request letter dated January 22nd, requesting a waiver of this section. So again, it comes down to the ordinance says it has to be concrete. They're asking for a waiver of that to make it asphalt, similar to the Gettysburg Middle School and similar to the neighboring Shippensburg Physical Therapy, Gettysburg Physical Therapy now.
How many feet is that approximately?
What's the width of that property there, Chris? It's not very long. 210 feet? Yeah.
I think that was one of the reasons why we granted a asphalt for Blue Mountain Group, was that it was a fairly lengthy section with a wider requirement.
Just to be clear, we're not really opposed to the concrete sidewalk. We just figured you guys would want consistency and from one property to the next. That was the reason for the waiver. So it's really your decision as to what you want to see in the bill.
And then the question comes up, you know, if you go to the property to the left of this, we have easements there across Spectra Coat's property on extending the trail all the way back to SCAP, where ultimately it'll get connected to the Gettysburg Station project. So again, what do you want this entire trail to look like? Do you want it to be asphalt, concrete? If I would suggest this, that if the decision is to change it from, you know, the physical therapy has asphalt, if you change it to concrete here, it would be odd to then go back to asphalt again whenever you go across Spectra Coat. You would want to, at that point, kind of keep it all concrete.
Well, concrete denotes a residential feel, I think. I mean, most houses have concrete in front of them.
I'm just curious, are there, other than like aesthetic purposes, I mean, is there some long-term wear and tear that we should be concerned about in terms of which one would last the borough longer? I know it's probably hard to say.
So the property owners are responsible for maintenance of their sidewalk.
Okay.
The asphalt is cheaper to install up front, but it doesn't last as long. It doesn't have as long of a life. Concrete is a little bit more expensive to install up front, but it has a longer life. So if you're looking at today's cost, it's way cheaper to get asphalt. If you're looking at the life of the sidewalk, it's not that much different because you're gonna have to replace asphalt a couple times over life, same life of concrete.
Do you recall, is Marty correct that we did Blue Mountain asphalt because it was a large space? I don't remember why we did that.
I'm not sure. I do know that there was a conversation about the fact that the ordinance only requires a 5-foot sidewalk, and they were agreeing to go to 8 feet wide to make it a trail, and that was part of the trade-off. If they would make it 8 feet instead of 5 feet, they could justify the cost of that better by going to asphalt. So there, I guess there's a quantity component to that conversation. It's still not a huge property there. Like the Shippensburg physical therapy property is not like, that's a different scale than, let's say, the Gettysburg Middle School, where it has an asphalt trail, or the trail that goes out past the County Conservation District. That's all 8-foot wide asphalt trail. Those are obviously way different in terms of the length than what we're talking about with these small one little lots.
What would residents prefer if they lived in those homes, do you think?
I live in that zone. I would prefer concrete.
Well, this,
If I may, we have had issues with the asphalt on the adjoining property owner side. We've already encountered failures.
That is accurate.
well, it sounds like I'm getting from my fellow commission members that we would be okay to vote, to Chad's original question, that we could pause right now and vote on this waiver. Are people prepared to do that? Or we would like to kind of
do you
wait
think we
and
have
do this?
consensus? I think I'm persuaded by Jenny, who lives in the neighborhood, and the developer saying that it's not an issue, and Marty commenting that it has a more residential feel. So I would be supportive of concrete.
Personally, I like the idea of, I appreciate that it's wider with the asphalt. As someone who rides their bike and likes to try to get around pedestrians, it's challenging sometimes. But I think I understand kind of, particularly with knowing that this is one of those things that's going to trigger these additional sidewalks that we have built into some of these things we've approved in the past, and wanted to set a good standard for that. So I would be able to reach consensus with that as well, John, I think.
I prefer concrete.
Okay. Well, sounds like we are ready to. So would we make a motion to approve or deny the waiver? Would that be the appropriate
Yeah, I mean,
move?
I guess you have two options. You would either go ahead and make that motion and make that vote to deny the waiver, or if the applicant's willing, they could just withdraw the waiver request. And I mean, it's 6 and 1, half dozen in the other.
Okay. So it sounds like they're willing to just withdraw. So,
Yeah, it's really the board's,
and we appreciate that. Yeah, thank you. So,
we can just withdraw the waiver.
okay,
When we come back, next time you see the plan, you'll have concrete sidewalk.
great. Thank you. All right,
Okay,
thanks, Chad.
so the next one is trees on the private property planted within 3 feet of the adjacent sidewalk. I'm just mentioning this. We also made a comment to this effect from the stormwater management. So we just take a look. You can see the 4 trees that are being proposed. They're kind of stuck in between the stormwater infiltration pit and that sidewalk. So we would just ask that a little bit more space be provided there, and/or root barriers be installed around the bottom of the trees to kind of keep the roots going down and out instead of right into the sidewalk. As everybody knows here, that tree roots in sidewalks are always, we want the trees next to the sidewalks, but then the roots damage the sidewalk, and it's just a thing that we fight with forever. So I don't think I really need to say a whole lot with that. We'll just let Chris have a chance to take a look at that. Also, the type of tree being provided can maybe we can take a look at that as well. A tree that, I think the trees that are there have a mature height of over 50 feet and a canopy of 40 feet. So maybe you put in a slightly smaller tree.
Does the borough have like a selected species of tree?
Yes, there is a tree ordinance. Marty, am I using the right word there? That's the tree ordinance that's
Yeah,
has all this.
I mean, it hasn't been updated in a while, so we still got some, still got Bradford pear on the list.
Yeah, we don't want Bradford pears. That is something that we don't want. But Chris, if you have an option or two that you want to use, shoot it over to me. I'll share it with Marty, and we'll get. Marty's also on the shade tree committee.
Okay. We're open to
So.
whatever you guys prefer.
Thanks.
So the next item there is number 13 is about the ADA spaces. So our ordinance does require that they have ADA space. And it may seem a little bit odd here, so we had some back and forth about, if these are all residential units and each person has 2 spaces essentially to their residential unit, where are you going to stick this ADA space? Unfortunately, that's the ordinance requirement. We passed it by the solicitors, like John said earlier in the opening remarks. That's what the solicitor said, you got to have the ADA space. So, Chris, you'll have to come up with a place to stick an ADA space. And then the only other comment that I wanted to stop on was the SpectraCoat access drive is being removed as part of this project. And the applicant noted that SpectraCoat has indicated that they would agree to that. And then I had suggested, okay, can you provide that in writing? And then the applicant said, well, it might be an issue getting that in writing. So I passed that on to the borough solicitor, see what he says. There are some previous plans. If you go back in the history of this thing, whether or not those plans are valid or accurate at this point. There has been several different iterations of subdivisions and land developments on this parcel. So this is kind of something outside of the purview of the engineer and more into the borough solicitors or the assistant solicitor that you guys take advice from. So I haven't seen any response yet from our council on that. I don't know if you have any input on that, John, or.
No, we have not. We did have a discussion with Adam, but yeah, it's something we can try and get a formal opinion on this. It appeared though that the current owner does have some leeway, so that's something I will have an opportunity to speak with Adam, and we can get back to you at the April meeting.
And I'll say the only thing that I would say from an engineering component is that to make sure it's still safe. And as long as the fire department doesn't have any issues, that parking lot's pretty big, so I can imagine they're going to have any issues getting in and out from, essentially they're going to have to come, anybody that goes to the Mason-Dixon Distillery or SpectraCoat is going to have to come off of 4th Street. They won't be able to come off of Water Street anymore. So I think there's plenty of room there for that turning movement for fire truck, fire apparatus. Ultimately, the fire department, that is one of my other comments, that we need to have their review. I guess that's in the work, John. I guess we haven't heard back from them
Have
yet.
not heard back. That was sent out to their review team.
So I don't know if there's any further discussion that you guys need to have on that unless you want to.
I mean, I feel like that a lot of that is kind of not really necessarily within what we're usually focused on. So I think as long as it's all worked, in my personal opinion, as long as it's all worked out between the fire department and the lawyers, I don't think we have much to say on it, unless there's other thoughts.
Do you folks have any input on that item? We're just waiting for the borough solicitor to get back. Adam Boyer is going to weigh in.
So as soon as I can get some kind of response back from you guys, it'd be nice to be able to hear that. 'Cause again, we're going off of a record that says that the water line and the access drive should have been moved a long time ago from this property. So that's kind of where our position is right now.
Fair enough.
So on to county comments. They only had a couple of things. And in your packet, I don't want you to get tripped up. So the way the county does their reviews is they point to older letters. So they had their most recent letter was March 4th. The only new comment there was 3A for pedestrian connectivity. We suggest the sidewalks bordering the parking area be extended to connect the public sidewalk for pedestrian accessibility and safety purposes. So I think they just want that sidewalk to connect out to the main road. That shouldn't be very hard to do. Are you okay with that one, Chris?
Yeah, I think that's
That's really the only new comment. And then aside from that, all of their comments, they just point to their previous letter. So I do have a copy of their previous letter that was dated October 9th. They made an additional comment on 2A about driveways. The old comment said, we suggest the parking for each proposed townhome be relocated to the rear of the property. And this is, again, whenever the townhomes were arranged differently. So in their new comment, 2A, they say, while parking has not been relocated to the rear of the property as suggested in our initial site design comments, the reconfigured design is preferable to parking along the front of the property that would potentially interfere with the proposed bicycle easement at the front of the property and the use of the public sidewalk. This configuration is also more consistent with what is seen among adjacent properties. So they reiterated it. They said, while it's still not in the rear, it's kind of to the side at this point, and it's better. Any thoughts with that?
I mean, personally, I think as long as it fits within our ordinances, I don't know how much. I don't have too much thoughts on it. Other folks?
I'll jump in here real quick. So yeah, with the landscaping, how many planting units are required there?
Those are listed on the title sheet. Do you have that number off the top of your head there, Chris? Or if you go to the landscaping plan, there is a number required and number provided.
I apologize. I would love to get a hard copy. Every time I try and get down to that part, my iPad crashes out. It doesn't like how much info is in these packets.
So
It's
there
like,
was 7 copies delivered in our last submission, so it should be
Okay.
floating around here somewhere.
I'll get one from
We can
John
get-
there.
yeah.
That's the bigger one.
That's for the station.
Okay.
So with regard to planting units, I know we have proposed 41 evergreens, 25 shrubs, and then 4 shade trees.
So my concern is whether or not it would require a landscape architect to design. I think the cutoff there is 20, according to our ordinance. And then the parking lot itself, our ordinance states 1 mid-row landscape island for each contiguous spaces. That's 221103 4A2. So you're showing 12 spaces, and you don't have to put in the islands. I'm not a huge fan of. I think it would be much more interesting to put in some kind of little courtyard. Honestly, if you could just combine 2 of them or something, but. It's a little concerning, I think, just having enough solid parking in there. That's not. I'm not a big fan of it. Maybe that's just how I feel, but it would be nice to get some trees into the center there, and our ordinance does say 1 per 10, or every 10 you need something in there. So.
The challenge with the layout becomes then some of these parking spaces that are conveniently placed in front of their unit are no longer, you know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
What do you do at that juncture then? I mean, I guess you can't really spread the units out any further. I was gonna say you could space, pull the 3s apart on each side and put something in the middle, but there's not a whole lot of room with the property to be able to do that. Between the stormwater in the front, which is the low end of the site, and then the rear property line is right there. It doesn't give us the liberty to have a lot of space to jockey things around.
Sure, and it is your design, so I respect that. It's just I know our ordinance states 1 mid-row per every 10, so I don't know if you can do something there, but I would like to see something green in the area there.
Well, I think it sounds like either way we would need some type of waiver, right, John, for the point that Marty's bringing up?
Well, so what's going to happen with one of these roads is there's going to be a modification to the number of spaces. That's why staff really didn't do the full review for the parking lot this time. But it would be if it's required per the subdivision ordinance, it does require a waiver if it's going to be changed. That's just probably.
Okay.
Yeah, I could say, like, in addition to that, I think the ordinance requires one space per unit. So, I mean, we could sacrifice a space on either side to be able to accomplish something like that. It would just be less spaces that are available to the occupants, that's all.
Yeah. Well, I think it sounds like, we've definitely, one of my first things on Planning Commission was the parking lot for the tour center. I know we were really working with them to make it not a block of concrete. So I think to Marty's point, it certainly is something we've tried to be consistent about, is just having some more beautification within kind of these larger parking structures. So I think if you're able to do something coming back, and I think depending, it sounds like, on the outcome of where we end with the number of spaces you even need, we could see if, one, you're able to do something, two, if not, I think the waiver we'd have to vote on the waiver then at that point. So it sounds like something that we could just wait for more information on, since we obviously have to talk about this next month anyway. Does that make sense, Marty? I get what you're saying, certainly, and like I said, we've tried to be consistent about that, so thank you for bringing it up.
Yeah, and I think, Chris, if you can also add, I was trying to take a look here. I can't see anywhere where it says the number of units required. Like to see how many are required by ordinance versus how many are proposed, and then you can compare. And then we'll take a look at that ordinance requirement for the island every 10 spaces, and if there needs to be a waiver requested, we'll either have a modification of the plan so that they don't need a waiver, or they'll come back to you with waiver. Okay. Let's see, what else did the county have? The county had, they keep adding the same comment about light pole replacement or light pole placement. And I think, Chris, if you just kind of explain to them that, I think they're getting us confused. I think they're looking at the easement that's being provided for the trail is also the easement for the lighting. And that's appropriate the way that they're doing it, because the lighting along that trail gets dedicated to the borough. So they're providing the easement for both, and it looks like the trail itself is going to, like, the bikes are going to run into the light, but it's not going to be bikes there. It's going to be grass, essentially. So I think they're just maybe confused that crosshatch where, like, on both sides of that light and where that tree is not a part of the trail. Correct. So I think that's just kind of making sure that because they put that on their letter twice now. So let's see, the other, I got two more here. One is, this section requires that design measures must be utilized to provide privacy screening in rear yards. Has not been indicated on the plans whether this will be provided. And then again, they have a comment about the privacy screening required between private areas must be shown on the plan. So I believe the ordinance requirement for that was that if you had townhomes, you have a little half of a fence that goes out in between the back. So each property owner has their own little backyard, and they have a little tiny privacy fence in between so that they can have their grill or something sitting out in their back patio. And that each one of them is private from the next one. I'm pretty sure that that's what the ordinance intent is. So if you could take a look at those, there's two comments there to that regards. One was 3C and one was 4A that the county pointed back to again. So that's all I have. And like I said, we do have other stormwater comments that we'll be reviewing with the Stormwater Authority. So I don't think we need to get into that now unless you have any questions about it. So we can dive into it. But other than that, that's all I have for now.
Thank you. And John, can you just remind us, so are we requesting the extension, or are we
You are voting to extend the review. You can go till next month if that makes sense, or you could just vote to table it. Either way, the extension is per the request of the applicant.
Okay, thank you.
I'll
So-
move.
Okay, yeah, thanks.
I'll move to accept the request for extension. Is there a date we have in mind here?
April 20th is the next meeting.
Is that when we want it till, or is it longer, or just till next meeting?
If the development team would like to extend it further, we can do that, or we can, if we want to reconnoiter next month.
90 days is the typical time.
Yeah.
for an extension.
Okay.
That's probably what I would recommend.
Excellent. We'll accept the request for 90 days.
Second.
All right, Marty moved and John seconded. Any discussion from Planning Commission? All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. All right, motion carries. Thank you all. All right, so now we'll move on to our one piece of new business, SLD 260001, Jacqueline White, 95 and 99 Steinwehr. So typically what we would do is I'll ask John to kind of give us a summary.
This application is for a minor subdivision for property located on Steinwehr Avenue, 95 and 99. The idea is the process has begun actually for this, to demolish an accessory structure to the existing 99 Steinwehr Avenue. 95 Steinwehr Avenue, a yellow structure, is going to be lifted up and then put to the rear of that 99. And then all the space that's going to be created from moving that structure would then allow for the development of a park area. The actual subdivision itself is identified on this plat. As you can see, the new Lot C is what's being created from the two, generally kind of polygon rectangle shaped. There is this, the actual design, design review components associated with this project were reviewed by the Historic Architecture Review Board. The action does appear to be ministerial in nature. There is, the comment from the county involved some markers on the plats. What staff would recommend is conditional approval can occur to allow for the plan to be recorded per the borough engineer's satisfaction. That would be one method, but otherwise that it would be the plan is pretty much at a point where it is ready for action.
Thanks, John. Chad, do you have comments?
Yeah, and really this is just, like John said, this is a pretty straightforward plan. It's just a subdivision plan. It's cleaning up the property lines to allow for this park. What you guys may be more interested in seeing is the park design once that's developed. That's going to be the next step in this process. So that isn't completed yet as part of this, just the subdivision to clean up some lines. The only two things that technically that needed to be fixed was one of the property lines needed a meets and bounds added to it. That has been since added. And then, like John said, there was a county comment about setback, the rear yard setback not matching the table. So that has been since corrected so that those two things jive with each other. Aside from that, it's really, like I said, it's pretty straightforward. The only other thing I think that you might see is during the demo, at this point, if you've gone past the site, the old white block garage has been demoed. During that process, it was identified that there's some roof spouts on the old red building. That's the building on the top left of this plan. That old red barn has some downspouts that are kind of falling off, and they need to be cleaned up. So probably the new house and the downspouts from that old red barn are going to get tied in together into one connection to the borough storm drain system. That'll need a little bit of an easement. So it's a pretty elementary thing. Just mentioning that there's going to be an easement for those stormwater pipes to get connected. Aside from that, this is, like I said, it's a pretty straightforward little plan. I have no objections to a conditional approval.
Thank you. Any comments from Planning Commission? So it sounds like, John, we would conditionally approve to the satisfaction of the borough engineer, is what you recommend?
That's what staff
Okay.
would recommend.
So any motions from Planning Commission members?
I move. Do you want me to say the whole
Yeah,
thing?
yeah.
I move for conditional approval, subject to the satisfaction of the borough engineer.
Second?
All right. Jenny moved, Charles seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you. Okay. Now we will move to our item of tabled old business, SLD 240003, Gettysburg Station, 108 North Stratton Street. So I think we're going to have a presentation led by the developer. John, do you want to give any intro to that, or just we should go right into that, you think?
Well, the development team is here tonight,
Right.
And can discuss the project. Overall, as everyone is aware, this is Gettysburg Station. It's been something we've been discussing, at least since my tenure with the borough, and much longer when it was the Ready site. Overall, the development team, I guess, can provide more direct information if you'd like to. We do have the copy now of plan sets for the transit center. I have not had an opportunity to review those. If you want to discuss them, we can. But otherwise, if there's any other material, we can proceed.
If you're able to go to the podium, I think it's better audio for people live streaming. We'd appreciate that, yeah.
Can I ask a question while Mr. Harrison is going?
Sure.
We have 3 letters from C.S. Davidson, from the county, and from the Conservation District. Will those be addressed through the presentation, after the presentation, next month? How do we handle what we
We're
have in
planning
front
to
of us?
address them.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got, it's a pretty long letter.
Yeah,
60 comments.
yeah.
I have 30 of them circled that I would like to go through.
Want to do that first?
But
or-
we can, however you guys want to do it, it's up to you.
Well, maybe,
The only thing I would add is the Conservation District letter, I assumed would more be in the purview of the Stormwater Authority.
Agree,
It's the
yeah.
stormwater discussion.
Agree.
So we were gonna discuss the county planning letter, which I think is relatively simple.
Yep.
And then your letter, your
Agree.
site plan land development.
Agree.
And then would you like us to engage afterwards? Or
oh,
is
you
this-
can engage anytime you
Okay.
want.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, so I think, we're kind of treating this as we are at the Planning Commission typically with public comment. We're more open to a bit of a back and forth, I think. So I think that sounds good for this as well from the developer. We might, politely interrupt and ask you a question. I think, Chad,
Anytime,
if you
yeah.
can add context where it makes sense. And then anything that is not addressed that we don't discuss that I think the borough engineer still feels like the Planning Commission should be aware of, I think we would appreciate that afterwards as well.
That's
So,
fine. Thank
great.
you.
Thank you.
So my name's Tim Harrison. Thank you for allowing us to be with you tonight on such a night of such adverse weather conditions. I am the developer, and with me are Alex Tweedy from Land Corps, the civil engineer, and John Chick from Ratu Associates in Lancaster is the traffic engineer. Charles Alexander lives in the project architect lives in Ellicott City, Maryland, and his wife had some reservations about him traveling up here. So, but he is available by text message, he said. So, and John's right. We've been at this for a while now. The first decision of relevance really was the zoning hearing board, and that was on August 26th of 2023. There we requested special exception relief under a provision of the ROR zoning district, which allows height credits in effect from the maximum 48 feet up to and including 72 feet if the zoning hearing board determines that you meet the eligibility requirements. And in our case, they determined that we did with respect to 2 of the 4. The first being that we would relocate the existing Rapid Transit Center from its current location on Carlisle Street to a new piece of property that I own on Stratton Street. And then the second, that we would extend your pedestrian trail along the property, the southern part of the property, along the railroad line, and dedicated to the borough, which we included as part of our plan. We also are putting in structured parking. under the ordinance, there's an additional 24 feet of credit available for that. It wouldn't have been much use to us since the 24 feet that we received would have gotten us to the maximum anyway. And the zoning hearing board decided that we were not eligible for that credit because within, as they viewed the plan, they didn't feel that it was within any building. So we weren't eligible. We then spent quite a bit of time before the Historic Architecture Review Board, a number of discussions and meetings. And finally, on November 20th of 2024, so it was 12 months after the zoning hearing board decision, the board did make a recommendation to the Borough Council that a certificate of appropriateness be adopted, and that was adopted on December 9th of 2024. So once that step was completed, we turned to land development planning. We filed our first preliminary/final land development plan draft, I'll say, in the first quarter of 2025. Received some pretty extensive comments from the county, from the borough, did our best to address them, and then refiled a new draft on November 11th of 2025. So that's the plan that's probably in your package now.
Yeah.
Now, we do have comment letters from the county and from the borough. We also do have a comment letter regarding stormwater. The stormwater comments we're going to prepare for a May Stormwater Authority meeting, and we have some. I guess we have some rethinking to do there. I think the notion was that the system that Alex designed will work, but it's pretty complicated and might create an undue burden on the authority in terms of monitoring compliance, and is there a way to simplify it? I have no objection to trying to simplify it. So I think, in essence, we'll be working collaboratively with the borough engineer, with the authority, trying to come up with a simpler way of handling stormwater, and hopefully it'll be ready by May.
Great.
On the county comments, we will address them. They're not too many. They basically, I think 3 or 4 of them were picked up from the original letter that we received on our first submission. They just wanted to make sure that we've addressed them. The one thing that's not in your package, that we did have a county letter saying, what's the new transit center look like? And has Rapid Transit approved the plan and the layout and the rendering. We do have that now. John can put it up if you want to see it, and you're certainly free to comment on it. I think one question which will remain, I think it's for you to decide, I'm not quite sure about that, is do you want that plan this is for the new transit center, to go back to the Historic Architecture Review Board? If you do, we're happy to do that. But there it is. We did have I wouldn't say it's a comment, I would say it was an observation from the county that the ROR ordinance says that if you want the credit, the height credit for relocating the transit center, you have to put public restrooms inside with an S, meaning there's got to be at least 2 of them. And so we have, as you'll see. That's what it looks like. It's fairly self-explanatory. And we have, it does incorporate comments that we received from Rapid Transit. I probably should mention this also. The height of that building is 21.5 feet, so that's 2.5 feet less than the minimum height of the ROR district. But as part of the zoning hearing board action, on August 26, 2023, they granted a variance, so we can make the building height 21.5 feet instead of 24. The existing one is 22 feet, so. So that's that, and again, feel free to comment or give us your judgment on whether that needs to go back to the Architectural Review Board. And then finally, I know there are serious concerns about traffic, and so we retained Virtu to prepare, to do traffic counts and prepare a traffic impact study. All that's been done, and a considerable amount of work has been done, and we'll address that too. But just to kind of give you sort of a high-level summary of where we are, John did identify, well, if an intersection is constrained, if an intersection is suffering congestion, PennDOT wants to make sure that if your development is adding traffic to it, you're mitigating. In other words, you're not making it worse, and you're not making it worse not the year you open, but in your 5 years later. But there is a safe harbor. If the delay that you're adding is 10 seconds or less, they regard that as not requiring mitigation. It's more than 10 seconds, they require mitigation. If you can't mitigate, they have discretion to look at something called an alternative transportation plan, something else that you can do that they regard as a benefit of equal or greater value. Anyway, John and I have done that in other projects, and we had actually contemplated that here as well.
So if we could just pause for a second on traffic impact. I did want to get into that a little bit because we received comment on traffic impact. And I guess, John, I'd just be looking for some guidance. I mean, from my understanding, traffic impact study is required. PennDOT is the authority that is making the determination of
Right.
Whether or not there's a mitigation needed, like you mentioned. And so from our position as Planning Commission, what if any authority, and the answer might be none, do we have to kind of talk about, not that we can't talk about it, but I don't get the feeling that we have any authority to kind of determine what is within that study, what counts, what doesn't. I think it's just us understanding if PennDOT has approved it or not.
Yeah, it becomes a component of the plan review, but it's in so much as did they receive the access agreement from PennDOT, not so much how did they receive that agreement. That's my understanding with regards to Carlisle Street. I mean that's what's going on. Otherwise, negative externalities associated with the development could be something that there might be a finding of fact, but that would be something Adam would be able to identify that and tell you, and he has not done that yet with this project, to find something that would be red flags in that regard. So as it is, any design changes to the site as it relates to the traffic impact and the access agreement, that's what would be the Planning Commission's purview.
Okay.
Yeah, I think John said it well. I mean, PennDOT preempts pretty much all that. The one thing I would add, though, is it's a collaborative process. So when we were defining, let's say, what intersections do we study anyway? Which ones are relevant? I mean, all of that was done in collaboration with the county and the township. So we've reached a meeting of the minds on that with PennDOT. In fact, if I remember, I think the township wanted us to add a few, and we did. So anyway, the one intersection that did not fall within the 10-second safe harbor that John found was at Saturday midday, if I recall, at the intersection of Chambersburg Street and the square, and there it was 16 seconds. difficulty is, what are you going to do to mitigate? I mean, it's not like you're going to widen Chambersburg Street. Imagine the destruction that would have to occur in order to accommodate that. So it turned out there's some cameras on the top of the Gettysburg Hotel. They're video cameras, and they regulate the flow of traffic by signal timing in various intersections leading to and from the square. But they weren't working. So we thought, well, John went up on the roof, and I think if we fix these and get that system working again, that should mitigate. But then it turns out the day we didn't realize this, but the day we counted happened to be a day where a number of other streets, because of a public event leading to the square, were blocked off. So it put a lot of pressure on Chambersburg Street. So we're going to recount. We're going to recount after Gettysburg College comes back from spring break. It wouldn't do to recount while they're away. So that's where that stands.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I wanted to weigh into the question for traffic impact study. So first of all, the borough does absolutely have a role in reviewing traffic impact. You may comment on it. You may employ your own rules and regulations to this. For instance, the access on Stratton Street is a borough road. Like Tim said, I was directly involved with all of the steps leading up to the traffic impact study. They do first a scoping analysis to where, what are we going to look at? And so I weighed into some of the signals that traffic signals that I wanted Ritu to look into with that process on behalf of the borough. PennDOT will not complete the review without input from the borough, and they'll keep getting on John's case over and over and over and say, hey, what's the borough think? What's the borough think? So you guys may weigh in even on their process. But I'll say this. So, and I like to give this comparison to the stormwater. The borough is allowed to control erosion, control mud into our streets and whatever, but whenever they have that NPDES permit that goes to the County Conservation District, they have a way bigger, heavier hand in the process, and it's harder to comply with. If they can comply with the County Conservation District for NPDES, then that's more than what they're going to need to comply with the borough. In this stance, it's very similar. Carlisle Street, they're going to need an HOP at the end of the day. They're going to need a highway occupancy permit from PennDOT to be able to put that access drive onto Carlisle Street. Before they can get an HOP, they need a traffic impact study approval. PennDOT's going to require that the borough weighs in on that traffic impact study, but PennDOT is going to be the ones that are going to determine whether or not they get that permit. And their review process is way more stringent and heavy-handed than the borough is. So a lot of this, whenever we say that we don't really have a role, well, we certainly have a role in that process, but PennDOT's role is so heavy in this that they're the ones that come up with this 10-second standard, and you just don't pass go type of a thing. That's largely a PennDOT requirement. And so we kind of piggyback on their review and defer to them largely because their review is so heavy-handed. So hopefully that helps.
No, that does. Thank you. And I didn't mean to suggest that the borough did not have impact. It was more, what is the Planning Commission's role in commenting on this? I mean, we are here at the direction of the Borough Council to focus on land development. And so it was my understanding from what John said that, as long as it passes, that's kind of the previous. So I was just doing that more to address some comments that we've received from the public specifically about the traffic impact study and to not pass the buck. But I think we need to be careful about what is the Planning Commission's role in all of this. And there might be other resources within the borough that are a bit more involved in the traffic impact study versus I think we're just kind of looking for, has it received approval? And if that answer is yes, I at least don't think our best use of our time is to dig into that and maybe go against that. So
still not a good use of our time. I agree with that 100%. And one of the big ticket items with the traffic impact study, and the reason why John's here with us tonight, is to go over a little bit of this recount that we have to do on the square. I was the one that brought it to your attention last month that why was York Street existing as an A, but Chambersburg Street at the same intersection on Route 30 existing as an F, and then we realized these counts were done during a parade. Right, so they have to do the recount. There's a chance that it doesn't fail anymore and that it meets this 10-second requirement. So we won't know that until we do the recounts after school. So we can get into that detail right now if we want to, or, I do have a comment in my letter whenever we get to the traffic impact study, but I think that's really the only item that we need to dwell on right now. The rest of it, to your point, we don't need to get into the weeds of the traffic impact study, so.
I think the good news is all the other intersections in the study area fell within the 10 seconds.
Yeah.
So they're within that safe harbor. All right, so that's enough, probably more than enough for me. Now I'm going to let Alex come up to the podium. Well, actually, it's really your. Yeah. Well, all right. Maybe we'll do this. John Chick can come up to the podium, you can deal with traffic, and then we'll from there go to the land development comments.
Thanks, Tim. Good evening. My name is John Chick. I'm with Ratu over in Lancaster, and between Chad and Tim and everyone else here, gave a pretty high level of where we are. I guess just to go back a step, again, we started on this project quite some time ago with Tim. Again, as Chad indicated, we go through a very detailed scoping process with PennDOT. The borough's involved, borough staff's involved, the county's involved. We had that scope, and I believe, as Chad indicated, there was some additional 4 intersections added. We counted a total of 10 intersections within the borough. Again, we had to do morning counts, afternoon counts, and Saturday counts. Again, through discovery, it was realized that the counts on our Saturday were done during Discovery Gettysburg weekend.
The Remembrance Day.
Or Remembrance Day. So again, those counts were somewhat off kilter due to road closures, et cetera. We planned on counting those. We were going to do them the 4th, but we found out that spring break for Gettysburg, and they only went back this past Monday, so we'll be counting this Saturday. Again, the same intersections will be counting from 11 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon to recalibrate our traffic model. The study, again, it's very involved. We've been through, I believe, 2 or 3 iterations with PennDOT. Again, very detail-oriented on their reviews. At this point, from our last comment letter, we're basically down to the one comment, and that was, as Chad indicated, the square with Chambersburg Street, trying to mitigate the 10 seconds of delay that we had there. We're hoping, or we believe that with the updated counts, that may work itself out. Again, Tim still is committed to assisting the borough with the camera setup. And the way that operates is there's cameras up on the hotel. I don't know if you've seen them up there.
Yeah.
My understanding is that they monitor traffic. When traffic backs up into the square, it communicates out that each intersection, signalized intersection beyond the square, to trigger them to go green to allow traffic to flush off from the square. There's some newer technology out there. Spoke with the folks from General Highway Products, who is the borough's, I guess, their maintenance folks, and they deal with the parts. They came out here again between the weather and Robbie's schedule and everything, just trying to coordinate to get up on the roof to look at those. I believe they looked at them. When they got back in touch with me, I said, just wait, we're going to do some new counts. We'll talk after this meeting here to see what the equipment needs updated or changed or whatever to get that system back online. So I think at this point, like I said, we're down to one comment, basically to address that. And I'm thinking with the new counts, it's probably going to resolve itself. If not, again, as Tim indicated, we're going to have to look at this alternative transportation plan, which you basically have to put whatever it would take to mitigate that improvement in dollars out to somewhere else within the network to basically offset your impact. So that's where we are now. And again, I'll take any questions, or it's a lot of technical stuff in here, but specific general questions I can answer from anyone.
When do you anticipate having the completed study?
Well, if we get the counts will be done Saturday. They're done via video, so the data has to be processed, I believe, probably in about 2 weeks. I can have it back in for another report. So I'm hoping for your next meeting, we'll have the report in here for everyone to review, and I'd like to make that submission to PennDOT to maybe have a letter. They usually take 28 days to review something. So the sooner we get into them, the sooner we can get a review back. And again, we submit all that to the county as well as Chad and his folks. So it'd be very short term.
Thank you.
Are there specific items? I'm trying to keep several papers in front of me and refer to them, but in Chad's questions that deal with traffic, with your comments, Chad.
Yes.
And I was wondering specifically about the whole question of the transit center and Hazel Alley being used for buses.
I have a separate comment.
I thought you
that
did, but I
regard.
can't find it now. Where is
That's
that?
at the very,
Would that be the kind of thing that you could address tonight, like while Chad's suggesting some of those related to Hazel
Maybe
Alley?
we just start running down through my letter and.
Just on
Alice-
traffic.
I think the bus circulation is probably more. in-
Oh, is that-
That's really not part of the TIS.
I see,
We
okay.
can discuss that.
Well, I just want to keep it organized. I don't know, I don't want
Yeah.
to screw anything up.
I can address that. I mean, I guess I did ask Rapid Transit to give me some idea of how many buses come and go every day, and would that change in the new facility? And unfortunately, I didn't hear back from them, but they're looking, and I should have that by the April meeting. I think that I'd like to know that. I'd like to know how many we're talking about. I think that informs the decision.
Sure.
The issue really is it's pretty tight to turn a bus around on the lot that we have because it's pretty small. I have talked conceptually. I don't have an agreement with the Southeast Adams Community Action folks about maybe an easement onto their property in exchange for repaving their parking lot. Maybe creating some additional turnaround space. That would give us much more flexibility and maybe not have to use Hazel Alley. But at this point, if the Planning Commission said, we don't want you to use Hazel Alley, then I have to get busy and get that done. But what I wish I had, and I don't, but I should have it soon. I'll tell Chad and John as soon as I do. How many buses are we talking about? Because that really is relevant. I mean, I think.
I guess I just ask for the good of the group, and thank you, Mr. Harrison, is that as we're trying to think about these things, to get a lot of advice here from John and Chad about when in the process makes the most sense for us to ask our questions. Like, I don't know if I'm ready to say, don't use Hazel Alley. Like, I'm just not there yet. But it is helpful to know that the traffic study is separate from some of these other discussions.
It is.
Like the use of, and I had a question about a stop sign related to the bike path. I think I saw an additional stop sign.
That I'll have to defer to Alex and John.
I mean, but again, I don't know if we want to deal with these now, if that's traffic or if that's something else.
Covered too. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, and it's okay that you're bringing these things up to make sure we don't forget something. If something pops up in your head, feel free to shout it out. This is organic, right?
Okay.
We can kind of hop back and forth. But I do have both of those two items covered in my letter.
But it sounds like, going back to traffic, that process still has a little bit to go.
Yeah.
Yes, we have to count. We
Right.
have to see.
So there's a whole new counting situation.
Right.
But while that's happening, we can still ask some of these questions.
Yeah, I would say stop signs, vehicle circulation questions, those are site design questions.
Okay.
So we can work that out as part of our site plans from a civil standpoint. We can discuss that tonight if you want stop signs added, if you want to talk about how vehicles move. That's more under my purview. We can discuss the details of that. We can be working on that in the background to get the site plans updated with, do you want a four-way stop, two-way stop, different stop sign locations, crosswalk locations? And we can work on that on the background while they're doing their counts. Their counts are more about regional improvements at the square, how to deal with those delays. And there's some specific comments about the access specifically at Carlisle Street that are part of PennDOT's access to that, and we've actually already coordinated that with PennDOT. There are a few site plan changes that come out of that. But anything related to the transit center, as Chad noted, Stratton Street is a borough street, not PennDOT. So when we get to the Stratton side, that's more in your purview, and you guys control that circulation outside of PennDOT.
So whether or not there's a stop sign on Stratton Street or if it's just a yield, that doesn't change the number of cars. Now, I could see, I think maybe to your point, we don't know how many buses yet we're talking about. If there's a lot, and I have all these buses going down Hazel, I'm looking at John here maybe, they might have to change some of the counts. A couple of more trips that are heading down Hazel Alley. So it could impact, the traffic study looks at trips, the number of trips. So some of those trips, if they're going down Hazel Alley versus down Stratton Street, it could potentially change an intersection or two. My guess is it's a low number. But I still think that could potentially impact the traffic impact study a little bit.
What about adding a stop sign? Doesn't that? create delay or?
Not necessarily. I mean, it's still going to go back to the number of trips, and from what I can remember, the trips are super small on Stratton Street, so I don't know that it's going to change anything. But I mean, it could, I guess. That would have to get changed on the traffic study, but I don't see it impacting the traffic study.
Thanks.
So I think, yeah, I don't know if it's helpful if, I think we're okay on the traffic impact study. It sounds like we'll have a bit more information about that in April. I mean, any other questions on that, or are we kind of feeling okay about where we're at with that?
Comments that you want to?
Yeah, no, I think
Go.
that's it. Maybe
Okay.
we'll just start running down through my comments. If we come back to traffic
Okay.
study, we'll pull you back up here. But and Alex, the way I'd like to handle this from my side, I have 30 of the comments circled. As we go down, we'll just start from number one. If you have any other comments that you have a question about, feel free to chime in. But so starting at the very beginning there, John has it pulled up. Number 4 is a comment about principal uses. In the traffic study, they talked about these high turnover restaurants. So I would just like to have that included in the plan, that there is no high turnover restaurants. That's all.
Yeah, I think the big question is, the environment of leasing. I know early on there were some views as to what type of uses would take the retail spaces over the years. I think the leasing environment has changed as to what type of uses there are. So, we'll coordinate with Tim directly, coordinate between what his vision is of what he sees as his tenant mix, what is in the traffic study and what's on our plan, and we'll note for consistency across. But I think that environment's somewhat ever-changing.
I think I have to make a comment here. I mean, to a great extent, my vision, such as it is really subject to, am I able to find tenants to lease the space? But I really would like to have a restaurant. I think that would be a good use. And I have had some conversations, although admittedly long ago, with a coffee. Starbucks wanted to be there, and I said I knew that wouldn't fly, so they're not around anymore. Although I know they're in the hotel anyway, but they wanted a drive-through and all that. Anyway, but this would be a kind of a local entrepreneur. I'm not sure what high turnover restaurant really means.
So it was and the reason why, and it's an interesting conversation, because whenever we do a land development plan, to Alex's point, we don't really know what the final tenants. So we got to make some assumptions. Traffic engineers had to make some assumptions. So the first assumption was that there was going to be some high turnover. Then the revised traffic study was there not going to be any. And there's a significant difference between a high turnover restaurant. So I think of Subway. People go in, grab your sub, leave.
Oh, okay.
That's different than the Dobbin House, where they go in and they sit down for a 2-hour meal.
Right. I understand now.
Right.
The ideal would be the latter. It's not high turnover. I want a nice restaurant where people can sit down and have a nice lunch and a nice dinner. Will I be able to find one? I hope so. I mean, to some extent, it depends on the rent you're offering. But I haven't put a whole lot of rent in the pro forma. I mean, I think that use is really important to the overall program. But I can't promise it because it depends on so many factors beyond my control. But that's what I'm going to try for.
John, do you want to weigh in on the high turnover restaurant there?
Yeah, as you're aware, the ITE has different classifications for land uses in restaurants. So they start everywhere from a fast food restaurant with and without a drive-through. Then they go to a high turnover restaurant. What I usually consider as a high turnover is like an Applebee's, something like that there, where it's, again, table service, you're sitting down. They could have a bar, and it's kind of a high turnover type of use. A fine dining is what we use, which, again, typically does not include a breakfast element. Again, it's more of a lunch, dinner, a little higher, longer type of seating type of arrangement. There's a fast turnover, is a new use actually in the IT now, which is very similar to like a Moe's or I'll say a Panera. Some of these uses, some have drive-throughs, some don't have drive-throughs, but it's more of a, you kind of walk in, you get your order, it's ready, you sit down and you leave. It's not really a fast food. It's more of a, you order on your app or whatever to go in. So it's a new classification, just came out with that. But again, the high turnover, when we consider that's like a Denny's, an Applebee's, Texas Roadhouse. that type of a restaurant, more commercialized, larger, where, which, right. So again, that was, as Tim. So,
So and the challenge for the people like John is that once this thing's approved, right, there's a 1,000-page traffic impact study, and this thing gets approved with this list of proposed uses. If they want to come back in later then and say, well, hey, look, I do have a tenant now that's ready to go with this, and this is a different number of trips, the right thing to have to be done would be you go back to RTU and have them revise the traffic count with PennDOT if it doesn't still fit within the framework. Does that happen? I'm not sure that it always happens.
Well, and
right? It would take the code officer that is giving that use permit. It would take them being wise enough with ITE manual to say, hey, that doesn't fit within this framework of this traffic study, which is it's a stretch for most municipalities that they have that person that really is going to be diving into that level of detail. You see what I mean? So the best we can do now to have some notes on the title sheet. I think that's all I'm asking for here is to kind of frame it the way that it's being approved. So then nobody, you know what I mean? So you can say, okay, this is a type of rate of a restaurant that we're looking at that fits this category of trips.
And that's absolutely fine with me. The only thing is, I mean, it's kind of interesting because the way that Chad framed the question, it sort of presupposes, of course, the developer would tell you if they were doing something they were supposed to. But if there's a note on the plan, then I think even if I didn't want to tell you, I kind of have to tell you, because now I'm proposing to do something use-wise that's not on the plan.
Yeah, I think it sounds like we're just looking for consistency between the traffic impact study and the plan.
If I can't find a fine dining restaurant, I'll have to come back, and then we'll have to study it, and hopefully, whatever it is that I can find, won't throw the entire borough traffic system off. But I won't know that until I know what it is.
And
at least you know what I'm shooting for from a planning standpoint.
And there is a safeguard with PennDOT with their permits. They've gotten savvy over the years to these types of mixed-use developments where you're proposing one thing and then something else comes in. The driveway on Carlisle Street will actually be permitted as a low-volume driveway. And what they do is when they issue the permits anymore, they issue it based on the traffic numbers that are in the traffic study. So we say there's X amount of cars that are going to enter and exit that particular driveway on a daily basis. Anything that changes as a result of that. Now, it can still be a low-volume driveway. It gives you a window of up to 750 vehicles per day to access that driveway. So if we're still within the window of a low-volume driveway, typically we go back to the local level, the municipality, and say, hey, this use didn't work out. We're looking at this or a different square footage or something, and we'll do an amendment to the study with the trip generation, say, we assumed this amount of trips, this is what it is now, we ran the model, and really there was no change, so it's always a supplement. So in larger mixed-use type studies, that's very common to occur. I think for this one here, because the trips are relatively low, it's not going to change the classification, so it's really, PennDOT's not going to come back and say it's a medium volume driveway or something like that, so I think it's still always going to fall under the low volume, but I look at it like this, you get approved for X amount of trips. It's like your checking account. You have so many trips that you're allowed. So even if the use is up and running and all of a sudden the use moves out, a new use moves in, you can count the drivers and say, okay, we counted 500 cars a day. You were approved for 700. So if you look at what you'd be proposing to put in there, it's kind of like just the balance of what you have left. So there's always checks and balances that can be done as the project changes through its life cycle where you're from the beginning. So that's a safeguard that PennDOT does put into it.
Great, thank you. Yeah. Sounds good. And I think from Chad's point, we're just looking at this point for just making sure they're consistent, understanding they might change, but then that they're edited and kind of updated on both the plan and if they're updated in the traffic impact study.
Before they get too much further, John, do you have a link to the old zoning ordinance that this project falls under?
I don't know where that is.
I couldn't find it online, but I might not be looking at the right place.
Well,
Hard copy.
Yeah.
no, I don't have actually a handy link.
Because we're going to need that at some point since it's using numbers and things that are not on the new ordinance. I have a number. I have a clause that I want to bring up later, and we won't be able to find it.
I have a PDF of it
Okay.
on my phone.
Well, at
If
some
we need
point.
to read exact language, I
Okay.
can. It may take me a minute, but I can track down a specific section if we need to go that route.
Okay.
Okay, so, Chad, do you want to just move
So
on to
next
your-
comment is
yeah.
number 8. And this, I had to apologize on behalf of the borough to the applicant that we have 3 different sections of our ordinances with 3 different requirements for clear sight triangles. It's something that we have cleaned up in our new zoning ordinance. We intend to clean it up in our new saldo. And so that we made a comment that you need to have this clear sight triangle. Well, a clear sight triangle not only is an existing nonconformity because the existing Rabbit Transit site, but the proposed building, it goes through the proposed building, so it just doesn't work. And if you look through, and if you meet the proper section of our ordinance, it would be an 8-foot triangle, which would be right in the middle of the driveway. It would be silly to put an 8-foot triangle, tiny little triangle in the middle of this access drive. So the better way to do it, and I did find in the saldo that it points to PennDOT's requirement. So I'm going to suggest that we use that safe stopping sight distance triangle as the clear sight triangle because that gets around this this
And
confusion.
we agree that's the appropriate standard to design the driveway to, and would be the requirement of the PennDOT HOP permit as well. So it would be consistent with what PennDOT's looking at at that frontage.
So now I'm going to jump to number 13. Do you have anything before that, Alex?
No, 9's a will comply. 10, 11 are will comply. Yeah, nope, 13's the next one I have noted as well.
So that's about the signage. We asked for signage to be shown, and they said, well, that's a separate process when we apply for signs, and I'm getting that depending on what kind of person, whatever storefront they're going to have is going to be a different sign. So that some of this you can't do. I think the only thing that I wanted to know if there was going to be on a land development plan a separate, like, pedestal or anything like that, or all these signs going to be on the building. If there is going to be a separate pedestal or freestanding sign, where it show that on the plan, and that's really all I was looking at.
Yeah, and I haven't had those conversations with Tim yet, but we can do that if we're looking at a monument sign with like the apartment name or banner for some of the tenants. You know, we can identify that, or we can just respond that, you know, we're not anticipating any street side monument signage. Everything will be building mounted and will be tenant dependent. We can provide a response to that after Tim and I talk with the architect.
What I was intending is not to have pedestal or monument.
And just so you know, one of the things I look at with that is to make sure that the pedestal or the monument isn't in the clear sight
Right,
triangle.
clear sight triangle and sight lines,
So
et
that's
cetera.
kind of really the only thing I'm going to be looking at.
Right. Yep.
You know, I really think there's more than an urban infill site. There'll be building signage, but not a pedestal or monument.
Okay.
Great.
Number 14 is the next one in line.
Yeah, this one we were waiting. You know, Tim showed the new transit center design. We were in early stages when we first submitted with Rabbit Transit. We have a better idea of what the building's going to look like. We lit the trail on our property because it was part of our parking lot, but now that we're further along with Rabbit Transit, we can continue that lighting plan. You know, we still have to work out exactly what Rabbit Transit wants to do for lighting the actual transit center, which I assume will be more soffit lighting and canopy lighting underneath their covered patio. But knowing that the trail extends through there, we'll add 1 or 2 pole lights along the trail to light the bike trail kind of separately from the transit use.
So it's a will comply,
Yes,
essentially.
that is a will comply.
Okay. So I don't have anything then until the next page, until number 20. Do you have anything before that?
No, and 20 is really just a
We
will
kind of already-
comply that we talked about all the PennDOT HOP needs,
That's
so
the
we'll
pen-
obviously
that's
work
where
through
we
that.
had the comment about the traffic study. So, and then that actually also refers to the street ordinance comment, which we'll get to a little bit later as well.
Correct.
So then the next comment for me is down to number 25. Anything before that?
Yeah, and I think we just need to clarify that one. I think it's a hatching issue. We're looking, the dumpsters are basically going to be tucked under the Carlisle building with a bit of an overhang cantilever where there's almost going to be a ground floor trash room. So we're going to have concrete from the edge of Strict Hazard Alley into the back of the building, and the dumpster pads are going to sit on a big concrete pad. I think there's just some hatching we need to add to the plan to clarify the limits of asphalt versus concrete.
And I did see that there was turning diagrams on that. So there's actually kind of 2 parts of that. The first is that pads along Strickhauser. The other is that the response that you gave to my previous comments was that the trash removal for the apartment uses is going to be a concierge type
so
of
we
a
can-
collection. So just I'm just looking for a note, because there is going to be no dumpsters on the apartment side. It's just going to be a concierge. So having a note on a plan to that effect would.
Yeah, we added the trash room. So we almost had to look at the trash collection in two forms. There's the residential component of the apartments that have trash collection, which will be individual trash chutes, trash rooms, internal trash collection that will then be collected and dealt with pickup by the management company of the apartment, which is the concierge model of dealing with. The management company is going to deal with the residents' trash and schedule that pickup that way. The retail users, once again, it depends on tenant too, but those uses will manage their own trash separately. They will not be part of the management company for the apartment building will not manage their trash. So we have dumpsters that are separate for the retail users, so they'll manage their own trash. But since the retail uses are only on either side of Stricthauser Alley, we'll basically locate those dumpsters along Stricthauser Alley for the retail users, and then the apartment building will use the trash room in the railroad building, the larger central building under a concierge model. So we can, similar to the traffic study statement, we'll just spell that out on the plan so that it's documented on the record plan so that there's clear as to how we're managing trash.
Any questions from the planning commission? Make sense to you guys? Okay. The next one is about, it's comment number 26, is about easements and right-of-ways, and I'm going to
Yeah, I think there's a
come back to
typo.
this in comment number 34 here, but I did want to mention that we do have some questions about how some of these easements and stuff are showing
Yeah,
up.
and I will clarify, I think there's a typo on the plan. I think we've changed philosophy on Stricthauser Alley, and one note got deleted on the record plan, but not the lot consolidation plan. Our intention is to not vacate any of Stricthauser Alley, only Foth Alley.
Okay.
So there was an earlier scheme where Stricthauser Alley would stay public until it got to our property line. It bisects our Carlisle building and our railroad building. Originally, we were wondering if it made sense to vacate that and make that part of the property. But even if we vacated that, we would basically replace it with easements for all the utilities that run down there. So it almost doesn't make sense to vacate the alley because you would just be trading an alley for an easement. So why go through the paperwork and the vacation of that alley when we really need to maintain it for utilities and access for trash, et cetera, especially to the funeral home and everything. So we have to update some notes on our plans with that change in philosophy. We are not intending to vacate any of that. So I think a lot of the easement issues go away because that alley will stay. So we do intend to vacate Foth Alley, but the entirety of Stricthauser until it dead ends to the railroad, we intend to leave as is.
Yeah, thanks for that clarification. And so as we work through this, Alex, and you and I can get together offline here, but so I do understand that Stricthauser is going to be paved a little bit wider than the existing easement, and then there's also some new utility lines that are going to be along
Right.
the side that is going to have to potentially have an easement. I was looking at the existing drawings versus the record drawings for the vacation of Foth Alley, and I was having troubles understanding exactly that, like reverse subdivision. One of the thoughts, and we're going to get to this in comment number 34, is there is drawings now. So this came up in a previous comment that this is a subdivision and a land development plan. The subdivision is basically a lot consolidation. You're cleaning up all of these little alleys and separate lots. There's multiple lots now, and they're getting consolidated, except for the Rapid Transit. That still is going to be on its own lot. So to me, the cleanest way to do this would have the record drawing would not show any of the proposed features. It would just show that Foth Alley is getting vacated,
Right.
that Stricthauser is going to remain, all of the lots are being consolidated, so you have one new clean drawing, new final subdivision plan, I'll call it.
Right.
And then from there, all of the proposed features can get shown on where they have new. And one of the other things with rights-of-ways and easements is there is going to need to be ultimately an easement for connecting to Stricthauser off of Carlisle Street and Stratton for that trash truck because the neighbors on Stricthauser still need to get in with their trash truck. And Robbie for the snowplow is still going to have to get in off of Stratton or off of Carlisle
Yeah,
for
the intention is
snowplows.
the drive aisle of our internal drive lane, and call it Railroad Alley or whatever for lack of a better term. That will be a private street inside the development as far as ownership and maintenance. Tim's group will own that and maintain it, but we do intend to offer cross-access easements. Like we said, we still have to let emergency vehicles, trash trucks, etc., everyone access Stricthauser. So there will be a cross-access easement from Carlisle to Stricthauser and from Stratton to Stricthauser, providing that common access easement. So we can clarify all those notes on the record plans. Yes.
Perfect. Questions with any of that? The next one is number 27. Driveways need to be designed for emergency vehicles, so we just need to get the fire chief to provide their review.
Yeah, and there was a comment from the county on that. I think they recommended that they just wanted to see movements from the fire truck coming from different parts of town. So we'll update additional turning templates for, what if the fire truck was coming from the north or the south, that the driveway works in any of those scenarios. And then
And the only other thing that, and we had public comment before as well from the parking garage for electric vehicles parking in there, and how does the fire department view that? So keep that in mind as you get their comments.
We had some discussion internally about that with Charles. He does a lot of work in Baltimore too, so obviously this is an issue in urban parking garages.
Mm-hmm.
He says that what they typically do is you don't put charging stations where you don't want electric vehicles to park. You can't really prohibit them, and even if you put signs up, people tend to park where they want, especially if it's late at night. There's nobody enforcing this anyway. So you just put all the charging stations on the top level.
yeah, then you at least keep the charging. That almost self-enforces the parking location, because an electric vehicle is going to go to where they can charge. So if we put the charging stations on the roof or second level of the parking garage, if they don't need to charge, in theory, they would potentially park underground, but they at least wouldn't be actively charging there. But if they need to charge overnight, they would park on the top level, which would be open. And I think, we'll coordinate that directly with the fire marshal or fire chief and talk through. But there's some different strategies, that the architect has available that we can discuss with him and come up with a good plan.
So on to number 28, that's at the bottom there, and if you actually go to the next sheet, 28A, that was where I'm sorry, 28B. Yes, the 8-foot wide concrete path. I do intend to provide you the detail that we used on North Washington Street. It had a red dye in it as part of the Gettysburg Interloop. Of course, I'm colorblind, so I'm not qualified to weigh into this conversation too long, but that is the detail that I was going to provide to the applicant. This is not too much different than the conversation we just had about use of concrete for the bike trail. So,
and our response is the same. We're dedicating it to you guys, so you guys tell us what you want us to build, because it's your trail. So we'll provide whatever appropriate detail is what you guys are using for your bike trail.
So the responses I'm getting on North Washington Street is that the red dye that was spec'd looks salmon colored or pink.
It does, yeah.
Of course, I'm colorblind, so I can't tell for sure, but that may be something that we might improve on. But aside from that, that's what we're looking to do. Do you have any objections to that's where the red color had been proposed by HABI, the Healthy Adams Bicycle Pedestrian Incorporated, as in lieu of brick. So it was brick red or red concrete. That was the option that they were going for.
I don't know. I mean, as a bicycle, someone
red
rides their bicycle on that all
asphalt,
the
not
time.
red
It doesn't
concrete,
do
right.
much.
Doesn't yeah?
People just treat it as a sidewalk, and you got to kind of yell at them. So
It's very dull. Yeah.
I know it is concrete, yeah.
Okay, so if there's no more comment or questions on 28B, on my next one's 32A. Anything before that, Alex?
Nope, everything else is will complies on my list.
And really I'm going to wrap 32A, B, C, E, and F. They're all waivers being requested of landscape requirements. We had a lot of conversation about landscaping on this. They continue to make improvements on the plan, but there's still going to be, unless you tell me differently, Alex, that there's still going to be the need for waivers on these 4 or 5 items.
Yeah, I mean, the waivers are almost just by nature, since it's a parking garage, we can't plant trees in islands, either underground, because obviously it's covered, or on the roof, it's, a supported deck. So, there isn't a soil media. We're doing a little bit of a green roof in the island, but that's going to be, low level ground cover, sedums, stuff that you would see on a more typical green roof. So on the parking garage itself, we cannot plant, large shrubs, large trees, just by the nature of it being a parking structure. So we're putting all our trees, along the bike trail and in the islands on that parking row. So, I'll work with my landscape architect, but obviously, once again, we're creating the streetscape that the borough wants for their bike trail. So if you guys want a specific type of tree and a specific canopy cover, we'll work with you guys on what that planning template looks like. But the waivers are more related to the fact that we can't plant like in and around the parking structure itself, because though it's a parking space, your code doesn't really distinguish a surface parking lot from a parking structure, but obviously from a landscape installation standpoint, they're very different features. So we need certain waivers just because we can't do a traditional planting plan on a parking structure.
I think I would add there also, just again in historical context, this was something that the borough encouraged us to do, the structured parking. This is something they actively desired for, and it was appropriate for an infill site. We did not, as it turned out, get height credit from the zoning hearing board. But if you look at that decision, you'll see they commended us for putting it in because it was consistent with their planning objectives. So with that being the case, it's kind of hard to say, but you got to figure out a way to plant trees in concrete. You just can't.
Yeah, I don't think we'll probably have some thoughts on these waivers, but I also don't think we want you to plant trees that are going to die, in a year because they have no sun or no soil.
Right.
And I did, John, if you scroll down to the next page, L, I mentioned there that I would like to see the details for those trees. And I understand there's going to be separate architectural plans that we provided through the building permit process. But I do think since the landscaping is a component of the LD process, that we still get a chance to take a look at those details. But I think, generally speaking, I understand that, that what these trees are going to be is they're going to be smaller shrub type things that you
we can do like a typical section of a green roof we've used in others. I don't know that I would say they're going to be, construction documents because the architecture is just not there yet. But we can at least put a typical detail of what we intend to do in that island in the upper level of the parking deck, which is part of the structured parking. There is a green space there that we do intend to do, some low-level plantings that can be established in what we call a green roof, just because it's a supported concrete slab in the upper level of the garage. So to us, it functions more as a green roof, which obviously gives you certain restrictions as the type of plant material that you can put in there. So we can give some typical details with some, caveats that, the specific details will be part and parcel of the building permit application, but this is at least will give, Chad some understanding of what we are proposing and gives a general sense of the planting palette and plan for that area.
Any other questions about landscaping? I know there's a lot there. We kind of jumped down through that pretty fast, but obviously we're going to have to go through each one of those waivers at a meeting some point here and vote on them. I'm not sure that we're ready today to do that.
Yeah, I think
so.
We're going to talk about some changes we want to make along the north side too that's going to impact landscaping. So I think we have to update our plans and get the landscape plan to a more final stage before it's worthy of a true discussion of the specific waivers.
They're still working on the Rabbit Transit site, and that had a little rain garden in the back, which has some landscaping component to it. So I would agree it's premature to have too much more conversation on that, unless you guys have anything else before we move along here.
I think if folks have individual comments, but I do think it's a good time to remind, particularly folks here, that this. I don't think any of us came to this meeting thinking we were going to approve this plan. I think this is kind of a great update, and it's good to talk through a lot of these issues. But I think if there are certain things that it makes sense to wait because there'll be more information for us to vote more fully. I think we understand that. Mm-hmm. But if there are specific comments on landscaping, I think you'd probably like to hear them now. So, does anyone?
I think what we're we fully intend to just revise and resubmit the plans with, we're working on the traffic counts, we're working through the transit center design. We're looking to have this discussion. What we intend is to take this feedback back to our office, respond to this letter, amend the plans. A lot of the work we're doing is honestly more on the stormwater side with getting ready for the May Stormwater Authority meeting, but that will affect these plans slightly as well. So we think, in the future, once the stormwater's a little further along and these plan updates are made and this letter's a little bit reduced to address some of these comments, then we can come in and have, more detailed conversations about specific votes and specific actions we need.
That reminds me, I wonder if we need an extension.
John might be.
That we may want to ask for an extension.
Okay.
Because we may need to go to June or
Yeah.
after the stormwater meeting.
And
Yeah,
technically,
we
you're,
were gonna
you're
bring this-
granting the extension, but yeah.
I'm happy to grant it, but
Right.
I think we better get it on the record.
Okay, I mean, we can kind of end this discussion then with conversation around you would be granting the extension, and we can make a motion to accept that or not. Assume we will.
Yep. Okay, so moving down to number 34, we talked about this earlier about that record plan with a lot consolidation
Yeah, I
sheet.
think
So
this
I think
is
we
the same discussion.
same
Yeah.
kind of discussion. Yep. The next section is about trees. Item number 1 and 5 kind of go together there. We made some tree comments about there was a lilac tree isn't necessarily recommended under the street tree ordinance. And on Stratton, there's 2 existing Bradford pears that are diseased and we've been getting rid of. So I'm not sure if anybody from the planning commission or Marty or if anybody had any ideas on other trees. My landscape architect in my office mentioned, as you can see in my comment response there, the number 1 was a Zelkova. But is there any further discussion or thoughts from the planning commission on what type of a tree? I also mentioned in there that they technically need to get a permit from the shade tree committee. So if you guys don't have any input, they can take that up with the shade tree committee.
Yeah, we can make that formal application. Yeah, I'll talk to my landscape designer. My only gut is they might have been concerned about the size of the Zelkova versus like a lilac, so they might have been looking for a smaller tree.
Gotcha.
I can review, and similarly with the existing Bradford pears, we typically just don't take out existing street trees if they're surveyed there, but if, the feedback is, and rightfully so, if you guys want, I've owned a couple Bradford pears, I fully agree that they should all be removed and replaced. So if you guys want us to replace that and put something new, we'll add that into our plans. We typically just, as a matter of design, maintain existing trees in right of way unless we're directed to replace them. So.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes there are trees where obviously if there was a witness tree or something, we would want to protect it in place. But typically contractors would rather eliminate a tree because you're trying to protect those trees in place is going to end up costing more money than putting new ones in at the end of the day here. And since they're just the Bradford pears, we would rather have something other than that anyways. So
Yeah, we'll take more of a fresh slate approach to the streetscape and
you guys have
And
any
rework that.
opinions or
Any thoughts? or
Well, I
objections?
wasn't sure what was going to happen with the Bradford pears. There was no indication there of preserving or getting rid of them, so I wasn't sure what the decision was on those. But I think shade tree would be in favor of remove and replace. I don't know if utilities would be in conflicting anything there. It says you're moving a overhead line, it sounds like, which would be great. I'm not sure if I'm
Not
reading it
on
correctly.
that's along Stricthauser Alley, though.
Stricthauser Alley.
Okay, so
And nothing on Stratton.
okay, so yeah, it'll be
Sorry,
small. We've been trying to get away from the Japanese lilac tree on Shade Tree Commission, and I think your other trees we don't have any say, I guess, on your private trees. I know I put do not plant on your tree. I just wanted it to get noted how I felt about them. I was really hoping for something a little larger, though. It's considered a major shade tree, and you know, the tallest one I've seen so far is 20 feet, I'd say. We've got 26 of them on the borough, on our borough streets, so we've obviously got bigger problems with planting them, I suppose, than, you know.
Yeah, I'll provide this feedback to our landscape architect, and we'll look at options to go with a larger tree.
Our default is to accept your recommendation unless there's some.
Well, your landscape architect puts the stamp on, so I'll respect that too. I mean, that's, you know, I sort of hope I didn't make it complicated for you. You know, your first submission was you had 7 trees in front of the buildings there, 7 ginkgos in front of the buildings, and with the addition, the second plan showed, you know, a little bit of a buffer there along the bike path, which I highly commend you for doing.
We flipped the planting bed versus the street location to get the trees along the bike path instead of along the building.
Yeah, and thank you for the bike path. That's a great unifier for the whole project and for the community. But yeah, so I hated to see that, how they were, we lost the trees in front of the building, and I'm thinking, well, which one did you prefer? Because we only gained 2 trees there.
I think it was more about, that design was more about the benefit of the tree line creating a separation between the parking lot and the bike trail so that car overhang. The original design, when the trees were on the building side, gave a nice streetscape along the building, but the parking was directly adjacent to the bike trail. And in discussions with Chad, and he brought up some good points about somebody comes in with a larger pickup truck, backs into the parking stall, overhangs that parking stall. Now all of a sudden 2 or 3 feet of your bike trail is encumbered by a trailer hitch and a truck bed. Whereas if we kept, I think we have a 3-foot planting strip. I forget the exact dimensions, but we kicked the planting strip to the north side. We were able to put in some trees and some shrubs that separates and creates a barrier between the parking lot and the bike trail to pretty much protect the bike trail and let it be 100% open without car impacts of bumper overhangs, etc. And then it allowed us to create kind of the streetscape and the shade along the bike trail. The sacrificial lamb of that was we no longer had room to put the trees along the building. But I think the pros for protecting the bike trail kind of outweighed that design change. So we made that change in this submission. We think it was the right choice.
Okay. Thank you.
With that. The next comment is 34.
Did you skip over zoning?
I don't think we're there yet.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
There's nothing on
Trees
none
are
of your
next,
comments.
zoning. So there was nothing else from my comments that were on zoning. I think the county might have had something left, and I'm not sure if John had anything, but there was nothing else from my comments that were regarding zoning.
I did have a question, and I think it relates to the county comment on where on the plan currently lives the special exception that you mentioned earlier that you got from zoning hearing. I think it was on a previous version. I just can't find it now.
Yeah, and I'll look for the note. I think they just wanted the conditions of approval spelled
Right.
out. Similarly to the comments about the traffic study consistency, we'll go through the notes and make sure they're all noted, but they just wanted us to make sure that the conditions of the ZHB approval are spelled out on the record plan so they're documented. So,
And this connects to another question. I want to be educated on this. When we came up with those special exceptions, and that's why I asked for the previous version of the zoning ordinance, I thought that included in that was a requirement for the step backs.
there was relief granted to that.
Okay, so that's what I need to see because you're asking for a variance from the 2 step backs.
Well, that was granted. Yeah. So,
Okay.
In essence,
I mean, I could explain it if we need to again, but
Sure.
Should we give John?
But essentially, so I'm sorry.
This way you don't have to get up.
So essentially, if I recall, there was a 5-foot building setback
Right.
on the north side property line, and the borough wanted, and we agreed. There's there should be a green space separating the building from the property line. And I think what we left was 35 feet. So there were kind of two choices. One, we could shove the building 5 feet from the property line and do the step back. But then the building's
Step back,
but then the building's 5 feet from the property line.
Right.
Yeah, that,
Or is it better to move the building 35 feet away from the property line and push the upper floors a little closer to the edge of the building so the step back isn't quite so severe an angle? And the zoning hearing board thought about it and said, no, we want the 35-foot setback.
the argument and the basis of the relief, as Tim was saying, it's a 5-foot setback with a 30-foot step back. Our building is 35 feet. So the variance is really, we didn't build the first floor to the 5-foot setback. But our upper levels are where they would be if the step back was created. The step back just doesn't exist because we didn't build the ground floor version of it. So the plane that the adjoining property owners see is in the same location as if we complied with the step back. We just didn't build the ground level addition to not have a building to the 5-foot setback.
That's helpful. And
That's it-
I
that's
do recall
explained
this
it.
now. Yeah. So maybe should we clean that up, because we, as a planning commission, are the ones who vote on variances, but this was a special This was part of the special exception.
Well, it
hearing.
was, we got the special exception for the height variance, and in getting the special exception, we were given 2 variances. One for the transit center height, which Tim mentioned, to be slightly lower than the 24 feet, and then this step back issue. So there were 3 things granted by the zoning hearing board: the extended height special exception, a variance for the transit center to not be the minimum height of 24 feet, and then this step back condition was weight.
Well, to comply with the county and to help us, it would be helpful to see that on the plan so that we
Yeah.
can just be
Yeah, we
sure
can-
that we're.
We can create a note, just put it
Yeah,
on there.
right.
We'll just bring the.
There was one on a previous draft, I do remember, but.
Yeah,
I
well,
just don't
we'll
see
look
it.
through the notes and just make sure it's spelled out. But yeah, it's all spelled out in the decision. But yeah, we'll transfer those conditions over to the plan so that they're spelled out as well.
So next on my letter at the bottom there is stormwater, and I mentioned that that is what the Stormwater Authority, I think Tim eloquently described the fact that we're trying to find something that's maintenance friendly, so it's not a burden to the Stormwater Authority. I'll add this. So that site was essentially almost the entire site was existing impervious area throughout the years of its existence. So the new ordinances require you to do stormwater management for 20% of that, make up for the sins of the past, we call it. We also had some environmental concerns on that site. We weren't sure exactly what the previous uses are. Through the NPDS permit that they're going through, they had to address those things. We think there might be a spring on that site. We know there's neighboring houses really close to this site. So there's a lot of reasons why. I almost want to say, I think that the term I like to use is less is more on this site, where overkilling stormwater management is not necessarily a good thing to do. While we do want to do as much as we can with stormwater management to be stewards of our ordinance, this is a site where it's not a great spot for overkilling stormwater management. So we do want to work with the applicant on trying to do something that might be a little bit ultimately more maintenance friendly, that there's no burden on the Stormwater Authority, but also something that would respect all of those other elements that I just mentioned. So
Yeah, and the only other thing I'll add, we started this design years ago, as we've said. During the course of this design and recently, the approach that we originally designed fell out of favor with DEP, I think, to a lot of the reasons that Chad mentioned in his letter. And they've changed the credits in the last 6 months as to the credits that you get for that design. So it's not as advantageous of a design anyway. DEP and the MPDS program has changed what credits you get for that. So it makes sense to revisit this with a different lens. And we're working with Adams County and Chad's office and our geotechnical consultant to do some additional testing and to look at some lower impact or lower maintenance options to, as Chad said, a little bit less is more and be a little bit more practical in how we're approaching stormwater for the site.
So I have two questions. One about that, but first let me go back. I think I misspoke when I said variances are something this board does. That's obviously not correct. We do waivers, so I should.
Right, you just do
Yeah, I misspoke there. And just to be clear, we are only being asked at the moment for these 5 landscape waivers.
Well, have we already waived preliminary? I can't remember.
Yeah, I mean, we need to understand what changes are coming out of this, and then we need
Okay,
to
all right.
revisit the waiver list.
But at
That's
the
why-
moment, those are the only ones marked on the
Yeah,
plan.
the landscaping are the main waivers. We have to go through all these different letters and the design stuff and see if any other come up. And I think we'll have a more complete idea of the waivers as we move forward. But right now, landscaping is the
Okay.
majority of the discussion. Yeah.
And the variances are already covered in the zoning hearing board hearing from a few summers ago. But on the topic of the Stormwater Authority, which I also serve on, but I don't know this answer, it will ultimately vote on this plan, or will that be a recommendation of Borough Council?
Ultimately, it'll be, well, so that is the one item, there's 2 items that goes to the Borough Council with this. One of which is the stormwater agreement. That still has to go
Okay.
to the council. But yes, the Stormwater Authority will vote and essentially approve or deny the stormwater plan.
Right.
And then it's no different than Gettysburg Municipal Authority approving
Sure,
the sewer
okay.
and water component. You guys are going to approve the stormwater component. PennDOT's going to approve the HOP. Fire Department's going to approve the safety component to it. And all of those approvals are going to get sent to John, and then they can move forward. So yes, the Stormwater Authority will have its independent approval. And like I said, the agreement, the Stormwater Management Operation and Maintenance Agreement still has to go to the Borough Council.
Yeah,
So
correct me if I'm wrong. The Stormwater Authority grants us a specific stormwater permit. I mean,
Correct.
we filed an independent application with the Stormwater Authority for a stormwater permit directly from that. So
Correct.
my understanding is you guys issue the permit, which then allows the agreements to be placed for, stormwater maintenance subject to that permit that then gets part of all the paperwork for the final approval of the
Exactly.
project.
Answer your question there? Okay. So on to the next page, Borough Street Ordinance. I wanted to touch on number 1 and 3. Number 1 is talking about the HOP, and it has to go through the Public Works Director. So I understand that you will comply with that. Just reach out to
Yeah,
Robbie, and he'll get you the application for that.
Yep.
And then number 3 is, again, about the traffic impact study. I had it circled there. We already kind of beat that, but that's, again, where I have a comment to make sure that the traffic impact study is getting addressed with everything else.
Yeah, and the only thing I'll add from an HOP standpoint, I mean, we're coordinating with Ritu's office as well. The only thing that really relates to the plan on that is PennDOT on Carlisle Street is asking for we went through this in the scoping application, and then I think they changed their tune as to where we measure from. But PennDOT does have concerns about what we call the throat of the entrance. They want, a little bit of a driveway before you have a parking spot, just to let people turn in before they have a conflict with a car backing out. So they did ask us to remove one more additional stall along the Carlisle building, the first stall closest to Carlisle Street, to give, additional length to what we call the throat. Originally, they told us to measure it from the parking lane because there's on-street parking. Now they want us to measure it from the curb line, which basically pushed that measurement into the Site 1 parking space. So we're going to lose one more parking stall, along the frontage of Carlisle Street to increase that throat distance. And then, we'll push that through all our parking math, but it's a minor change.
That comment went away from PennDOT, so that made them happy.
So on to general comments, right down to number 4.
If this is the same alley
That's,
discussion again, right?
Yes, that's the same thing with the alleys being vacated, and yes, we already beat that one. Number 6 is
Yeah, I think this is just
the
architectural
parapet.
clarity.
Yeah.
I mean, the parking garage is fully protected from the upper level. You're just concerned about there being fall protection along the top level of the garage as it ties into the building.
Yeah, we
There
just
is
wanted to make
some-
sure that parapet that's along the top, the original plan didn't show it, and then this plan has it somewhat shown, but it still didn't connect the whole way over.
Yeah, we'll
And,
coordinate with the
yeah,
architect.
Just make
but
sure
yeah.
the architect's being coordinated. Number 8 is about the rain garden behind
Yeah,
the
that's,
Transit Center.
Yeah, we'll revisit this. That text item, I think, is a typo from an old design. We went back and forth with what to do there. we're revisiting that holistically with the stormwater approach. There is a small island at the back of the rain guard, at the back of the transit center where the buses would basically make the turn there. We're looking at whether or not that makes sense just to be a mini rain garden or if it makes sense just to be, a nice tree. And we have to look at that holistically with the stormwater approach for everything. But we'll revisit that as part of the stormwater and clarify what's called out in that location.
Okay.
And update the notes accordingly.
Number 9, this is with regards to the fences that are between the new transit site and the Sheeds property. The Sheeds have a 3-foot high white picket fence. What's being proposed is a 6-foot high stockade fence. Stockade fence is that it's a solid wood.
A privacy fence is what I would
privacy
call it,
fence, a wooden privacy fence. And those fences are being located like pretty close to each other, and it's going to leave this little strip in between. It's hard to maintain, so I'm not sure if you want to have a conversation with the neighbor and see if they can get consolidated into one fence, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we thought about this when we were designing it. We do two things. I mean, if you're familiar with that property, there's a little stone wall. The parking lot sits up high, and then there's a stone wall, and then you basically go into the neighbor's property. But there is a couple feet of property that's owned, as part of Tim's parcel in that area. The question always is, do you put the wall, or do you put the fence at the top of the hill above that, right against the parking lot? That leaves an area that's much more accessible, but it's outside the fence. So from a maintenance standpoint, the maintenance crew would have to know, that's outside my property. I have to go and mow it. It's easier to get to, but especially with a stockade fence that's solid, it becomes a little bit out of sight, out of mind. So our view was it's better to put it directly abutting that fence so that everything that's being maintained is inside the transit center. But I think the cleanest version is to see whether or not it can be one single fence
Maybe we
instead
just
of
do one common fence. I'll talk to the owner.
So, well, we'll talk about the logistics of that and the operation needs and make sure that makes sense.
The next one is another one about fences. The fence around the new transit center is listed on the plans as a chain link fence. The fence that's at the existing transit center is more of a decorative fence. So ultimately, I would think that a HARB approval would be needed for that. I'm essentially suggesting here that it be the decorative fence and not a chain link fence.
That's fine.
Yeah, I think Rabbit Transit might have requested the chain link fence. We can speak with Rich. I think the issue, the current transit center does not connect to anything, so it doesn't have a gate. So the fencing is just separating it from the railroad.
Correct.
This directly abuts Hazel Alley, so they actually have to be a gate so that they can close it at night. So I think the question is whether or not that span works with a decorative fence. I think we just have to talk to Rich about the details of it and make sure that we can get a, because the span distance we have to cover for the gate is quite large. So I think that's the concern with maybe the material selection. So we can speak with him as to what's appropriate and clarify some details. But
Maybe you do a hybrid though, where you have the gate, you have to have the gate, but you do a decorative fence everywhere else.
Sure. Yeah.
so, well,
That makes sense to you
We'll
guys.
try to figure something out.
I think the one thing I'd be concerned about is, and I'll look to John if HARB needs to approve. I think that'll be a question.
yeah, I think that's the ultimate question is who has the authority to discuss this and approve this. So
John, question.
HARB.
HARB.
Yeah.
So there we are.
Okay.
So on to number 11, and this is the what you mentioned earlier, Charles, about the bus traffic on Hazel Alley. We talked about this a little bit. I brought it up to basically question if the borough would find this acceptable. As Mr. Harrison's mentioned, we can't go down this path too far until we know exactly how many buses we're talking about. So I think stay tuned on that item. Is there anything else that everybody understand what's being proposed with Hazel Alley there? Did you have a question on that, Marty?
Oh, a separate question.
Okay.
I think go for it.
All right. Do you have anything else, Chad? Or
3 more, but should I finish those and then come back to you? Okay. Number 12 is And again, I think you brought this up as well, Charles. The railroad markings need to be replaced on Stratton Street. Same thing for Carlisle Street. But on Stratton Street, the stop bar conflicts with, there's a new proposed stop sign that conflicts with those railroad markings. And we were just wondering, and there had been some public comment about that turning movement. If a car comes and stops there at that stop sign, and then it's blocking traffic for people trying to ingress and regress from the new Gettysburg Station site. So I was wondering if it makes more sense, or why the decision was made to put up a stop sign, or does it make more sense to have a mid-block pedestrian signage for like a yield? We have those at a couple places throughout the borough, rather than a
Go
stop
to the
sign.
actual plan on the screen and look at this area, just so I'm clear on. It's probably the second sheet that shows the transit sign.
Probably sheet 23. It's sheet page number 20. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so the concern is somebody stopped at the railroad would block somebody from coming
Scroll it
out
up slightly,
of
John, just so, no, other way. Perfect, thank you.
And maybe zoom out one click, John, because then you can see that X on the north side of at the top of the page. That's the railroad marking that exists, and then there's a stop bar that goes with that too that you might not be able to see too well on the sheet.
Yeah, I think it's the dotted line with the rectangle right below the RR.
Yeah, it's in there. It's hard to see.
Oh, I think I see it.
It's
Yeah, I think it's below the RR.
where the
but yeah.
O and the U is on double yellow line, right down the middle. It's right between the O and the U. So you see the double yellow line right in the middle? It's italics right down the middle of the street. Yeah, right there. And right in between the O and the U of double is a stop bar.
Yeah, to the left, that's the stop bar.
So that's a stop bar for the railroad.
That's the stop bar for the railroad? That seems really far up.
It's not really a stop bar, that just kind of designates the rail crossing. It's part of the advanced warnings of the X's and the RR.
Oh, is the stop bar down further then?
Yeah, that's really just a
That's, you're right, that's just the designating the railroad crossing, but there's also a stop bar then that I'm not able to locate.
down to the rail crossing, I think.
You would be able to see it if you went to aerial imagery.
And, I have an aerial plan. Let me see if it's.
I mean, I'm looking at this, like, I think these are the markings in the road, right? And that's this is where a stop bar would be, right?
But I guess would it make more sense to have a yield, like a pedestrian, like a mid-block crossing? You would just have you'd have that man hand, the man symbol, the diamond shape with the little arrow that points down, and then whatever, there's a 500 feet in front of it or something like that says.
Are we talking about the yield to allow the pedestrians?
Right.
Well, there's a stop bar there today, and there needs to remain a stop for the railroad crossing.
You don't need the legend stop. That has to remain for the rail. That's
Right, right.
Before the crosswalk, you can put the yield line with the ped crossing with the arrows
Yep.
pointing down at that location.
Well, our understanding, and looking at the aerial, I think where we show our stop bar is the existing location of the stop bar. I think, to your point, we just need to get rid of the text that says stop. But we were trying to maintain the
So is that-
existing
so
stop
if
bar
you-
location and then have the 4-foot separation and let that stop control stay there, and then let the bike trail cross with the typical 4-foot separation and allow that bike traffic to operate with the stop control, because you
it
need the stop
doesn't-
for the train anyway.
It doesn't. John, scroll up a little bit. I found it. If you can scroll up a little bit, you'll see. No, the other way. And then zoom in at the crosswalk. You can see stop bar. There it is. So it would need to get, I guess, re-permitted with the railroad company to push that stop bar back, unless that's still within compliance of the
Is that
railroad.
railroad or?
That's PUC. I mean, with a rail crossing, you'd have to go to PUC, but that counting is typically outside the envelope of what the rail line is. There's a certain distance back from the train envelope that would go back, so you have to verify the train envelope and then how far that stop.
If that still works, yeah. If it does, the new stop bar location work is the question. That's something you guys have to take a look at.
Yeah, the stop legend should come out, because that's, road to stop bar is when a train comes for stopping there. If there was a stop sign there, then the stop legend would be applicable, but.
All right, so we should remove the stop,
Legend
remove the stop legend.
would verify exactly where the stop bar for the rail crossing should be situated in relationship to the crosswalk. You got a lot going on in a small area, so that's good.
Yeah, because we don't view that as a mid-block crossing, and really kind of in our opinion, since the crosswalk is right at the rail line. I mean, I don't know what the opinion is from a traffic perspective, but we don't really, since you're already stopping for the rail line, we didn't really view that as a mid-block crossing, because you already have traffic control in that location.
Yeah, I wouldn't consider that mid-block. It's a crossing basically, and I would consider railroad as a crossing, like of an intersection. So again, you can still use the pedestrian signs with the arrows just to make it aware of people.
Because it's the bike lane.
Yeah, because of the bike, you can use the bike pedestrian combination sign, so.
But the difference is the way it exists, there is no stop sign. So most people don't stop
Unless there's a train.
unless there's a train, right? So what's being proposed is there's going to be a stop sign, so everybody will have to stop.
Well, I think what we're hearing is we should get rid of the stop sign and the stop legend and just have the bar.
I see what you're saying. So because right
You're
now,
going back to the
right now it has a
existing, just-
sign, right? You have it.
Yeah, we show a sign, but
Okay,
what I'm
yours-
hearing is that should go away and it should be what's existing, which is just the stop bar, which functions only as a stop under railroad condition, but otherwise people can continue through.
That movement has free reign. It does not operate under stop control. I mean, you have to meet the warrants for a multi-way stop and the volumes, et cetera, sight distance. I mean, none of that would be there. But again, your pathway, you would probably have, I don't know if you have smaller stop signs or something there for people, like those little bike stop signs.
Right.
I mean, other than that, it would be uncontrolled, but the stop bar is strictly for the rail crossing.
Right. Yeah. So I'm following you with that. I think that makes sense.
I guess
So since the stop control is only when the bike's there, then a bike crossing signage is appropriate to give some extra warning, because there's
Right.
not
You
necessarily
could
an
have
automatic
both,
stop.
Right. You could have the stop bar for the railroad and the diamond-shaped sign with the little arrow.
A yellow fluorescent.
Yes. Yeah. You know what I'm talking about.
I mean, are we like, if this is going to be part of the bike trail, I mean, that's what that dotted, right, the crossing. I mean,
Yeah, that's for the bike
it's
trail to
kinda nice.
extend
I
to
think
the
it's nice
transit
to have
line.
a stop sign, right? Because then,
But
as
we
a
can't, a
pedestrian
stop
or
sign
bike-
is traffic control, so I think what he's saying is we can't add that unless we meet warrants, and there's probably
Okay.
not enough train activity to
Well, no,
create a warrant.
It's independent of the train. It's really if you're creating a stop for basically that driveway. There's certain warrants that Pub 212 has. It's part of the vehicle code. You gotta have a certain volume of traffic to warrant that for a multi-way stop, and you don't have that volume on.
okay, so it's even though it's here, it sounds like it's probably not an option.
The idea is the warning sign to warn people that are approaching that is a combination pedestrian bike crossing with the signs.
Okay.
Yeah, we would have a stop control from our site coming onto Stratton, but Stratton would not be under a stop condition unless there was a train crossing
But we would put a warning sign saying
for the bike crossing.
there's a
There
bike
might be
crossing
bikes,
ahead.
right? No, that's sorry. I was. It doesn't sound like it's voluntary that we're removing the stop sign. It's because it probably doesn't warrant a stop sign.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Thank you.
And I wanted to mention that in their stormwater comments, I made a comment about the position of the inlet. There's an inlet.
Yeah, there's
just
a
in the other-
casing pipe that we have to be far
Yeah.
enough to
And I
get
did
clear
send
of the
you
casing.
plans, right?
We haven't seen them yet, but we'll coordinate that from a constructability standpoint. It sounds like we have to shift the inlet further away from the railroad to get clear that crossing.
Let me know if you can't. I did have. It might have come from Adam Thomas in my office.
Okay.
Those plans for that thing, but that inlet's going to have to get pushed down. And there is another comment that I made. Is the next comment down about the ProWAG, the public right-of-way accessibility guidelines, and the crosswalks need to
So
have
can
that.
we go back to the plan and look at the Carlisle Street? So it's a similar discussion, and we actually had this discussion. PennDOT made a similar comment about kind of ramping in this location, so I think we want a little bit of feedback from the borough on that. and it's a little hard to see, but where that iron pin to be set statement is, just on the left of that, you can kind of see two double yellow lines. If you're familiar with that crossing, there's like a linear, it's almost like a trench grate that comes through there. So we either have to cross downstream of that or upstream of that. In discussions, it seemed to make more sense to cross downstream of that, but that's further from the railroad. And I think to your point with ProRag, you kind of come over the railroad and then you drop off a little hill. That's quite steep from a cross slope standpoint in that location. We think that's the appropriate, that seemed like the appropriate location in our discussions. But if we're concerned about slope, unless it becomes a technical and feasible or some version of it, the other option is to cross above those grades. But that puts us like right up against the railroad right away and pretty close to the railroad track. It does more align with, is that Railroad Avenue, I guess? There's a sidewalk that extends along Railroad Avenue. It does extend there. It's a little bit flatter, but we didn't love the idea of moving that crosswalk all the way up the hill. And there's a couple conflicts with utility poles. And then also reconstructing the roadway in and around the railroad right away. You know, that brings us into the railroad right away. So there was concerns about doing work on, what is that, Conrail property. So we have to look. We think this is the most appropriate location with our discussions with PennDOT. We do have to add, I think, a receiving ramp on the opposite side. But it would fall under, I think, a technical and feasible situation where we wouldn't really, without reconstructing that whole driveway approach, we wouldn't really be able to level the road for a 2% cross slope on that crosswalk.
Yeah, so just to weigh on this one, I agree. Those inlets, which are really outlets, they're terrible. And this is really the only location that you can put the crosswalk there. The borough intends to fix that whenever we do the Gateway Connectivity Project. We're trying to get a grant for that, and we're going to put new storm drains down the entire street underneath of the railroad tracks and eliminate those things. When we do that, we'll probably move that crosswalk over a little bit. So you're doing the best you can with it right now. The PROAC does allow for either technical feasibilities, and it also does have a section where if you're putting the crosswalk not right at a stop control or a yield control, it'll let you take it up to 5% cross slope. So just take a look at that as well. Maybe you do comply with that regulation. I mean, depending again where it is with relation to that stop bar, which rule you had to follow, the recommendation there. So.
Yeah, I think what we have to look at here, this one's a little bit further away from the railroad, and we still have that same stop bar condition where now the crosswalk is behind the stop bar. So we might have to look at, once again, we would like to probably take that stop bar and move it behind the crosswalk so the vehicles stop before that, but that puts us quite far away from the railroad, so we'll have to look.
I'm not sure what
how
that
looks.
Right.
Yeah, PennDOT holds us to that 2%.
Yeah.
They'll make us do technical.
Yeah, that's been coming up more and more often. So on the other side, then in Stratton Street, sorry, go ahead.
We'll have to put a ramp on the other side receiving too.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's going to fall more under the HOP permit since that's in the right of way. So we're working through that coordination. So we'll update our land development plans to coordinate with, Ritu's HOP drawings and make sure it's consistency. But we've kind of talked through this issue, and those drainage pipes really kind of create a roadblock.
Yep. So then on to number 14.
That's a will comply. That's just labeling for clarity on the garage, so we can clean up language on that.
Yep. And this came up in the public comments about making all of the consistent language so that we all understand what we're talking about with the street level versus ground floor versus lower level. So get that cleaned
Understood.
up. And then last but not least is the number 15. So there was a lot of public comment about access to the lower level of the parking garage. It's only an 8-foot wide drive. There's no separate designated pedestrian path to it. And we couldn't also see from this plan, now we don't have the architectural plans, if there was any emergency exit location from the lower level, if somebody needed to get out during a fire or anything like that. But
yeah, our plan is missing this detail that the architect had, and we did not properly copy it over onto our plan. But if you, the second sheet probably makes more sense in that corner. I think it shows that location. But the way that this driveway entrance works is you basically, those are multi-level rental apartments that front on Stratton Street. On the lower level, the driveway in, you span underneath the one unit, and instead of 3-story, it's 2-story, and you drive kind of underneath it on the ground floor or the lower floor. As was noted, that width only allows for an 8-foot entrance lane and an 8-foot exit lane with a center island with the gates and access control. What is missing from this plan is north of those townhouses, there's a sidewalk that runs from Stratton Street along the face of that building and then turns and ties into the lower level of the garage, and there's a door there that's missing. So there is a pedestrian connection and an emergency access, and I think as the letter notes, I believe it's required by the building code. We just aren't showing that on our plan. That was our oversight it was on an early version of the architecturals. A bunch of changes were made. I think it got lost in the revisions, but we are missing a sidewalk that will connect the sidewalk on Stratton. There will run north of the building and will tie into a door at that back corner, that upper right corner of the lower level of the garage to give both just pedestrian access in general, but also, an emergency exit from the lower level of the garage out to the building.
So in logistically, as we review these things, this is another one of these chicken and egg things that as a civil engineer that we come up with as we get through this land development process, and then typically at the end of this, then we submit for the building permit application. So this is a building code that would govern what we're talking about here. That would get reviewed by PMCA. If they would want something different done to this, it's going to potentially change the land development plan. So I'm just wondering, I'm kind of looking at John here, if this is something that we might, I know it's a little bit premature to submit the building permit applications to PMCA at this point, but should we be contacting the building code official to make sure that what is being proposed, they're going to permit? Because otherwise, then you got to come back to a land development plan that is recorded at that time and change it.
Yeah, and I think our architect is fairly confident that adding that sidewalk makes it compliant. But yeah, I think to your point, the more confidence we get that it does not raise a building code issue in the future, just saves us an amendment to a previously recorded plan. So yeah, we'd be open to any kind of preliminary blessing or preliminary opinion or review that is sufficient to meet that code requirement.
If the commission would like, we can send this to the borough's building official, Ken Spittler, with PMCA for a preliminary review and determination for UCC code compliance on these issues. I'm seeing a lot of nodding, so yes.
What about the parking for the Railroad Street building? Can you show us the path by which residents travel between their cars in that building?
Yeah, I don't know if it's on those drawings. It was on the original zoning plan. I think it fell off. I added it to this color rendering, and you might not be able to see it. But really, the question is, so for the railroad building, the main entrance or exit access to the apartments is in this cubby in the center. And then from the Carlisle building, there's some rear residential access stairs that come out the north side of the building. They end up being pretty much the same distance, but the main access path to the garage would be out of this building, down, or out of the building down here. And then at this main island, we do have a crosswalk and a center connection that connects to the bike trail. So both of these uses would travel to this crosswalk, come across, and then they would travel along the bike trail to Stratton Street, south across the railroad, down in front of the houses, and then around the back to the garage entrance. That's about 900 to 950 feet. So it's within the 1,000-foot requirement for the proximity to the parking lot. In reality, we take credit for that code reduction. We don't actually need it to stay parking compliant, but we are within the 1,000-foot range, so we are eligible for it. So it's shown on our parking calculation, but it does fall within the 1,000-foot threshold, and it's about 900 to 950 feet travel path, for that circuitous route.
That just stood out to me as long, but I imagine if it fits within the threshold, there's a reason the threshold's 1,000
Yeah,
feet.
The code standard is
It's like a
1,000
fifth
feet.
of a mile or something.
Yeah, we designed it to meet that standard. But It is at the upper limits of that threshold, but I mean, and frankly, the biggest issue is you got to get across the railroad, right? The fastest path would be to cross the railroad, at the middle of the site and walk right over to the back entrance of the garage, but,
But there's no street parking or anything that could be accommodated or that could be used by those residents.
no you're saying,
You mean on site?
Yeah.
Within your site.
Yeah, within your site.
yeah, no, I mean, we're envisioning that drive lane, we're envisioning as, like we said, it's almost going to function as a street in the sense of access to Stricthauser Alley, trash loading, et cetera. So we're not envisioning any on-street parking. I mean, I guess in theory on maybe the front of the retail building, we could maybe put a couple parallel stalls there. But I don't necessarily love that from just a circulation standpoint. We kind of have perpendicular parking in along that road where we want people to park. So our vision of that is it would be, perpendicular parking in designated lots versus a more
I'm just coming
on street.
From left field on this because it just occurred to me that, visitors and also deliveries and DoorDash and things like that, there'll be an accommodation. There'll be an opportunity to do drop off within the site to the railroad building.
Yeah, I mean, you see the gourd area at the top on the top deck of the parking garage to the right, upper left of the parking garage. There's that painted area with the 45-degree hatched markings.
Okay.
On the upper level of the parking deck, there's kind of a pullover area for, whether it's UPS trucks. DoorDash, there's a loading off Stricthauser Alley. You kind of have the U of the building. Right there, you can kind of see a dotted hatch. That is one of the loading stalls for a pull-off. That's more for back of house into the retail spaces, but could also be used for any kind of delivery. And then from a trash and other loading to the building, there is a loading driveway in the rear of the building, which goes back. In the basement is kind of the back of house, the trash room, the freight elevator, et cetera. So a lot of the deliveries that are more like move-in or trash is there. But, for your day-to-day kind of FedEx 2-minute drop-off, we're trying to go out some areas on the upper parking deck so that they would get out of the main drive lane, pull onto the roof of that parking deck and get over. The entrance is over in that location. So that's where we envision people kind of pulling over and doing those quick deliveries.
That's helpful. And just so the context for my question is just related to, as people use this space, as people live in this space and use it for the things that people need, how will that pose any kind of burden on people beyond this development as visitors come and go or deliveries come and go, or people are moving from their residence to their garage, which is quite a bit away, and then maybe want to find a place to park in the middle of that. But you're saying this has been considered as...
Yeah, I think one of the benefits and one of the points of this site that Tim appreciated was its proximity to that garage and the ability to use that garage for additional overflow parking for tenants, visitors, guests, tenants or customers to any of the retail spaces, similar to a lot of the other restaurants in this area. You park in that garage and you walk to the hotel or you walk to any retail space along this corridor.
I guess one thing I would add here, it's kind of the nature of a public benefit agreement. We don't really have an agreement, but
Sure.
I offered to add elevators to that parking garage as part of this project. It doesn't have an elevator now, so we're going to do that. At least from my conversations with the borough manager, it appears that there's a fair number of spaces that are typically not used.
Oh, there are, yeah.
Particularly on
Totally.
the upper level.
Yeah.
So we've been talking, although there's nothing firmed up, maybe we would even lease some of those spaces for the project as overflow parking. But again, it's been worked out. There's no agreement or anything. Except I have promised to put the elevator in. And that'll be a cost of the project.
Great. Chad, sounds like
So
that
I
was
can
the
give you
last.
a really quick 50-cent tour of the county planning comments, because we really pretty much touched on all of these already. they still had comments on emergency responses, so they wanted to hear from the fire department. They had a comment about the transit center site. They asked for Rapid Transit to have a chance to weigh in, which we heard earlier that they are allowing them the chance, obviously. They had a comment about the zoning hearing board decision. We talked about that earlier, that they want the notes of those zoning approvals to be added to the plan. And then lastly, they had a comment about landscaping. They said that they were satisfied with the amount of landscaping provided, and there was adequate buffering from adjacent properties, but then went on to say, however, detailed justification should be provided related to the hardship for the modification, particularly regarding the requests involving spatial constraints. So that was kind of their only really significant landscaping type of a comment. But we kind of touched bases on all of those things already, so I don't know that feel a need to dwell any longer on it, but I just wanted to touch bases on those items that were outstanding from the county.
Thank you.
With that, I have nothing else to add.
Great. I think, Marty, did you still have, I think you had one locked and loaded?
Right. There's something on the plan near the bike path. I can't figure out really what it is. It's, I assume, a small fence of some sort. But it's,
yeah, I think on the low side of it, yeah, there's some grading issues in and around the railroad where there's a low spot where we have to put a drain. We're not able to grade onto the railroad property, so there are a couple sections where there's some elevated curb. If you go, starting at Strict House Rally, if you go to the second to third tree on the existing railroad, I think that's the feature you're talking about. There's a dotted line and a little bit of a fence there. There is an elevated curb there because there's an odd little low point coming off of the railroad. In reality, in a perfect world, we would just drop 6 inches of dirt in there and level it out and let it grade across our site, but we can't put any earthwork on railroad right away. So there's a little elevated curb there. So our view is, since that's a bike trail, we envision doing some kind of just decorative fence along there. Frankly, we should talk internally. It might make sense to fence that whole area just to separate the bike trail from the railroad and just from its nature. But there is a slight little drop off on that railroad for that elevated curb. So we just don't want, some kid riding their bike to go off the edge and fall off a little 6-inch curb there. So we were envisioning some kind of fence protection along the downstream side of that trail.
If it is it's not a fence, it's a curb, you're saying?
No, there's a curb that drops off, so we would look to do a fence on top of that curb so that nobody's bike tire, rolled off the edge of that curb.
And so, I mean, like a handlebar, it extends out a little bit, and that would be my only concern. I don't know, I don't really have any experience designing bike paths, but it would maybe have a cross-section detail of that, just to,
And it's nothing code required. The height of the curb is not high enough that it requires like any kind of fall protection or anything. We thought it was a nice to have just for some extra protection. But if it's more of a hindrance and more of a concern for, constricting the bike trail use, I think we could remove it. I think we just viewed it as an option as far as.
Yeah, I don't know if you'd hit your pedal on it or something. I mean.
Yeah, the bike trail's fairly wide. 8 feet's pretty good width for two-way traffic, but we'd be open to any input on that. Once again, I think it's we could probably accommodate either.
Is there any chance it would go on the other side, closest to the boundary, the property line of the plantings, or?
We need it to stay. We need to pick up stormwater there, so we have a little yard drain at the bottom of that. Basically, the railroad flows onto our site, and our bike path is a little bit high, so there's a low point that gets trapped. So we have a yard drain down there that picks up that flow. So the curb has to be on the uphill side. If we move that curb right to the railroad right-of-way line, then we would have to be able to install the drain on the railroad side, which once again we can't do work on property we don't own. So that's why it's kind of aligned the way it is.
And so the bike path just extends across, and then is there a curb, or you're saying it drops off, right? It drops off. Bike path
We have a
drops-
parking lot high. We go up a 6-inch curb. The bike trail's at the top of curb elevation.
Sure.
But then on the railroad side of it, the existing grade of the railroad in some specific areas is slightly lower than where that bike
Drops
trail
off
falls.
a little bit. Gotcha.
So there's a little bit of
That's
a
fine.
curb there.
I'm okay with that. That's fine. Yep.
Bike with
But at
I
the
was
base
thinking
of that,
maybe
we're
it-
basically trapping water. Water's running from the railroad and hitting our elevated bike path. So
Sure.
there's a little yard drain at the bottom of that just to pick up that flow.
Excellent. All right. And no fence or a fence also? Are you?
I think,
Saying he'll
we'd
do
look
either.
for your feedback. I don't know if Chad has an opinion on this. I think we
I'm
We
not.
put it just from a public use perspective. We thought you guys might want, a little bit of protection there. I don't know that there's a code requirement that requires us to do that. We thought it was probably a benefit. But if there's
Well, the borough.
concerns that it creates more of a hindrance than a benefit, I think we could probably look to remove it.
Right. The borough would be taking this over. Is that correct? Or
the bike path, right?
I don't know that there's anything in here to be dedicating that piece of this bike path to the borough. It's a
Well, I think one of the conditions of the approval is we have to offer it for public use.
We have to
and it's-
offer it.
with a right of way, but the borough wouldn't be responsible for maintaining that.
Right,
piece.
I mean, but the borough has the option to take it, but you don't have to.
so
If you don't take it, we'll maintain it.
right. So I think this is a lot like, say, the bike trail that goes through the middle school. Right, there's a right of way for public use of that trail, but the school district still has a responsibility to maintain that sidewalk.
gotcha. Okay.
Now, the thing that the borough would take whenever it's along a public road is the streetlights. For instance, we just talked about earlier with the physical therapy place and now the Simrat development, those decorative streetlights do get dedicated to the municipality. In this case, I don't know if these aren't the same decorative streetlights. These are a different box style light.
Yeah, I think this situation is a little bit unique because the same lights we're using to light our parking lot also light the bike trail. So we did not look at it as Gettysburg Station lighting and then bike trail lighting as a separate entity. We're basically saying the bike trail doesn't need to be lit by the municipality because it's so close to our parking lot. It gets the benefit of our parking lot lighting.
And essentially, it's being wired to your buildings. And,
Right.
Right. So it makes sense. I think it's in the borough's benefit, actually, that the borough isn't responsible for maintaining this. So I think that answers your question. That this is all going to be privately owned and maintained. There's going to be a right-of-way across the property for public use. They'll have to always maintain it as a bike trail to allow people to cross the property, but it'll be owned and maintained by the property owner.
Yep. Yeah. I'm satisfied. Everything sounds spot on.
I'll have
me.
to think about that fence a little bit longer. I'm not sure if because I understand both points there. I think Marty makes a good point. Sometimes you have that fence that's right there against the edge of it, and you're riding your bike right against the edge of it. I do have a fence in mind. If we decide that we want to go with a fence, that would be similar to the one that I know it already has a harbor approval. It's on South Street. It's at the intersection of South Street and Washington Street. I can send you the detail for it. It's a little
Sure, please do.
4 foot high, black, painted steel fence. It's the same fence we're going to use at the Welcome Center. So it's just
Yeah,
whether or not
we'll
they
look
can-
at the grading closer, see how much elevation we're really talking about, and see if there's any opportunity to maybe get more of a separation.
or maybe like a row of shrubs along there.
Yeah, I mean, I think the question there was, what's the grade differential there? But yeah, if there's enough space at the bottom of that we can maybe plant some shrubs that would grow up against the edge of that bike trail and kind of create that same protection and define that edge a little bit better, then maybe we don't need a fence. And we might not need a fence at all. I think we thought maybe the borough would want it. So I think that's a question of maybe we offered something you guys aren't interested in.
My mother commented, "Where are the park benches?" And I said, "I don't know." So I thought I'd bring that up.
Mary Ann.
Along the bike trail, you mean?
Yeah, anywhere on the site. Thanks, Mom.
Should be a Joel and family park bench.
I don't think we have any.
I mean, there's some opportunities for places I could think of. Maybe
We could
use
try
out
to
some,
think
but-
of some. I just don't think we thought about that.
I mean, if the bike trail wants some rest areas, we have some parking lot islands. Like I'm looking at, that parking island that's directly to the right of where we were just talking about. There's a large island there. I know there's some trees there, but if we wanted to put a little, 6x4 concrete pad with a bench on it, on the inside of that lane, we could probably, put a little
Yeah.
park bench there.
Happy to do it if you think it's a good idea.
I'll leave it up to you. I mean, you're not required to, but I
Sounds
think
like it'd
it
be
might
welcome.
help.
Okay.
Well, and to that effect, would a bike rack, I could see people come in here to go to the restaurant, or if it's a coffee shop or whatever, and
Right.
parking the bike. The borough has used, or Habby has promoted, you know what a bone rattler is? It's the bike with the really big front wheel and then a really tiny little
Oh, yeah.
wheel. That's like the.
They had the bike rack
the
that's built that way.
historic-
Yep.
The historic bike rack,
I hate
like
that
thing that Habby has used, but
Give me the regular standard bike rack. That one.
you don't like that?
Personally, I just like the regular standard bike racks.
But
You
the,
get
the upside down U, where you can just easily lock up a
Put it
bunch
in
of
there.
bikes, is pretty easy.
I'm just trying to lock my bike.
All right, we'll add some bike racks.
I wanted to go back to page 4 real quick, just so I can make sure I'm reading the right thing. In the chart where it describes the bulk requirements, the mixed-use standards.
Page 4 of the plan or the letter?
I'm sorry, page 4 of the plan.
The plan, okay.
When you talk about, it looks like the railroad building is 69 feet, and then, of course, there's the 12 feet opportunity for mechanicals, and it looks like you're going to utilize that. One thing that occurs to me is we've never really talked about what that looks like, and can you share anything about what 12 feet of mechanicals looks like? Is that what you consider the roof?
Yeah.
Yeah, there were sections. I mean, this was all discussed at the zoning hearing, so I don't have those documents again. But we did provide some sections, I think, of the building as part.
But
of
it's
the
certainly not
zoning.
inhabitable space. It's
No.
okay.
No.
Okay.
It's a rooftop with units. I believe we did a parapet wall for screening along it, but
Okay.
And I think he pushed them away from the edge.
Away
of
from the edge.
building.
yeah.
And
But
one of
the-
those numbers, I should know this, but on the note number 3, when you say building height calculation, 506 basement, 518
The way, so this is the site drops off from the railroad. If you're familiar with the site, you're up at the railroad and then it kind of slopes down to where, as you're going north. So there's, on the railroad side, you enter, and I think this is what Chad was saying with making sure the nomenclature of the floor levels is accurate. There's a basement level and a first floor level. So on the railroad side, you enter into the first floor level, but on the north side, you're actually a story down. There's a quote unquote kind of walkout condition, for lack of a better term. So on the north side, the garage is buried, but if you were on those residential houses to the north looking south back at the property, the actual underground parking garage is open and there's ventilation on that north face because the site drops off a full story. So the height calculations do like an average grade elevation at each building corner. So when you calculate the building height, this is not a flat ring of ground where the building is built on one flat thing and goes straight up. The railroad side versus the north side are at different elevations. So that was just the math on how the code defines the building height so that we could show that we're within that
Okay.
72-foot range. And
And then last
it's the
question.
spot elevations at the corners of the building.
Last question on this area. This is where I think I got confused. The subject to Part 19, Streetscape Overlay District, and then you list the 2 items that you comply with, the 25% of parking internal and then transit center.
Yeah, they denied that request, so we had to clean up that note. They did not. Though I still disagree with that decision. They
Sure,
said that we do
but you
not
just
meet
need to
that.
substitute out A with the bike loop.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. We presented. There are more credits.
Right.
There are more credits available. You cap out at 72 feet, but you can actually get up to like 96 feet if you're eligible for if you got every credit. So we presented that we met, I think, all 4 criteria. The decision was picked different code standards than we
got 12 feet for moving the transit center and 12 feet for the bike.
Right.
Yeah,
I
but
think
we
the
thought
plan
we
should
were
just reflect that,
we
yeah.
thought we were eligible for more. They denied it, so we have to switch out that note to
There
note
was-
the ones that they
That's
offered.
right. We should
which
clean
is-
that up. There was 24 feet available had they considered the structured parking within a building.
Right.
But they did not.
Yeah.
They
I remember
denied
that.
that request, so we have to change that note. I believe that note's a carryover from the original zoning request, but we did not delete that from their decision. So when we update the notes for the conditions of approval, we'll clarify which credits we were granted.
Thanks.
Jenny, John, any other? I mean, again, to remind everyone, this is an ongoing process, and we're going to see more of this next month and potentially even after. So we don't have to have all of our questions now, but any questions remaining?
Well, thank
Well, you both so
but
much.
we should probably think about an extension.
Oh, yes. Thank you for reminding me.
I imagine, we'll talk about what meeting we're coming back to, but I imagine we probably won't be back in April. We'll probably be back in May after we go to the Stormwater Authority meeting.
We
So I
just
think
do the
most likely
90-day like we did before? Or?
So I
That'd
think
be
most
fine.
likely we'll resubmit, go to the Stormwater meeting in May, and then come to the Planning Commission in May again. So it would be, I think.
Well, I think we'll resubmit in April.
Yeah, we'll resubmit, but I don't know that we won't have a new comment letter, so I don't know that we'd be able to discuss much more than we discussed tonight in April.
It would be appropriate to do a 90-day.
So I think similar to that other than 90 days.
What do you envision the time frame for the new counting and how that would affect what you're able to present to us?
I think we talked
Yeah,
about,
the counts are gonna happen this weekend, so I'll get information within 10 days. I probably only need about a week to turn it around, and I'm gonna resubmit to PennDOT. They are 28 working days is what they're allow us to review, so it's usually a month. They ship out their consultants, so I'm probably.
early May as well. I think everything's coming back in that early May.
So hopefully by May.
Letter back, at least on the traffic study. And again, we're not gonna start the HOP until I think we feel everything's comfortable with the LD
Right.
plans, because we take his plans and use them to create our plans, so.
Right.
That's kinda where I am.
So I don't want to get myself in trouble with our community, but it seems to me that town is kind of quiet right now. Does it seem like that to others? I mean, are those counts going to be accurate as far as the maximum use during tourist season?
Now remember, PennDOT looks at average day conditions, they don't look at like.
Right,
if you go
yeah.
shopping center, You're
I'm-
looking at Black Friday, you're kinda, this is average time. So
It
you
is?
get, April, May, before school's out, you still got Gettysburg College in, you wanna do it before the regular schools are out of session, so this is my sweet spot for doing counts between now and May.
All right. Well, you guys know more than me on this, but I just want to anticipate the questions that the community is going to have when they hear that it's happening now versus.
Our last
August.
counts were in November, so the initial counts we did were in November, so to give you a gauge of.
Okay.
So it sounds like we had a request for a 90-day extension for this review. And so is there a motion from a planning commission member about accepting or denying that request?
So moved.
To accept it? All right, so John would move to accept the request and Marty would second. Any discussion?
So that's April, May, just until June, technically?
The June meeting.
Well, wait a second. The current extension is through when, John?
So this is up it'd be, the review has to occur on April 20th. If you do a 90-day extension, you don't actually hit the June meeting. It's a little wonkiness with the calendar year. So
You can just pick a date.
But wouldn't it be
Yeah.
90 days from the current April 20th?
I've seen that a lot of times is the extension's granted through X date.
Would it be 90 from the existing due date, though?
And sometimes I
You
prefer
could
just
do
do a
that, yeah.
date. and
That's
then
what I
that-
was thinking.
If you just do a date, then you don't have to worry about doing the math. So
Yeah.
what is the day in June? That's the way I've always preferred to do it.
Doesn't
Yeah,
the
so we could
extension have to
either
get us through the
June
borough
15th.
council meeting?
Right. So the June 15th plan.
No, our
That's the third.
It's
That's
the
the third
deadline's for
Tu-
council to vote, right?
No,
we
so
approve.
the,
Planning
this-
commission,
the
right?
planning
So the
commission
planning
has
commission
approval
is
authority in
the,
Gettysburg.
Oh, right.
Yeah, we're the final, for
Yeah,
this
very
portion,
unique.
obviously.
So it's June
15th.
15th.
Okay, so sounds like you'd be comfortable asking for an extension till June 15th.
That's
for that
fine.
planning
Or
commission
if
meeting.
you want to be safe, do it till the July meeting.
Well, I think we can reconvene, and
All
I
right.
think we'd all
another
be in
decision in
agreement
June if we
if
have
we
to.
needed
Do
to
another
do it again.
extension.
All right, fair enough.
Sir.
June,
So-
June 15th, fine.
June 15th,
We're likely not to see you until May, though. Is that what I hear?
yeah.
I don't know. that we'll
I'd
have-
come back in April if you want me to.
There just might not be much more
I
to,
don't know that we'll have any answers.
we
by
won't
that
have
point.
Chad's comments
So
or anything.
if I can, just for logistics here, since our solicitor isn't here, I'll play solicitor for a minute. But technically, you guys are requesting the extension. Ultimately, you have the bigger hammer because if they don't approve it, you just deny the plan. All right. So you're technically requesting the extension. The
I am
developer is
saying
approving
Oh, man.
the extension, and I would suggest that be provided with. You would have on record that the developer has verbally approved the extension, and then I would ask that the developer provide a letter or an email even.
I'll email John.
Formally approving the extension. That makes sense?
Yeah.
The MPC protects the applicant, not the municipality. So
Although your
that's-
minutes will have that I was here and I said yes, but
And-
I'll confirm with an email to John.
Did you?
Yeah, it sounds like the Conservation District comments and the stormwater comments will be at the April Stormwater Authority meeting.
It
There
may.
is no.
Or May, I'm sorry, the May Stormwater Authority meeting. And we have your comments. There are likely to be no more unless something is triggered
Well,
by.
I think Alex is hoping to have a revised plan before then, so you'll get new comments.
All right, so new comments from Chad.
Hopefully there'll be fewer, though.
Fewer, yeah. Probably, maybe comments from the county, maybe.
You'll get comments.
What else, John? We mentioned fire company. Will we see those?
That's the thing, yeah, we're still waiting on those comments from.
I'll call
fire.
them.
And municipal authority?
And GMA.
Yeah, I don't think we're gonna really have comments from them per se, but the fire one, that's something we need to get figured out.
And then the other thing, I know that I've brought this up, but I think maybe it's irrelevant now or a small detail that I brought to you the idea that somewhere in our saldo, it talks about how if there's a development over a certain amount of new residents, that the Recreation Authority would get a chance to look at it to suggest how this might increase recreation needs in the community. Of course, I didn't remember to look exactly where that provision is, but I know that I read it.
We can send it to Gara as well. That's
I remember hearing you saying that hasn't really come up, but I don't think we've had a development of a certain size with adding new residents. Does that sound familiar to either of you?
I don't recall that section.
I'll look for it too. I think the idea is that if the developer's providing recreation for their residents on site, it's irrelevant, but perhaps there's some discussion or review from our local rec authority on how to provide for the needs of all of these new members of the community.
Yeah, we look at it. I think in this case, on similar projects I do with this, the bike trail usually meets that standard
Right,
since we're offering the
it's very
bike trail, but we
likely.
can look at the specific language.
And there was, in looking at revising the saldo, that's one of the items as it relates to a recreational impact fee.
Right.
So that's something
We're not used to that here, but
Yeah.
and anything else that maybe we're not thinking of that we're going to see as far as other comments from around the county?
I mean, you're really getting close to the home stretch with this, and I think we've gotten pretty much stormwater, transit center, traffic study are where we're at.
So we still need to, we are making a motion to request an extension until June 15th. We have a verbal yes, that'll be followed up by an email, but I think we have to make that motion, I would imagine.
Yes.
Okay. So is there a motion to
I think
request an extension? Well, we made it that they were requesting, so I think we need to, yeah.
I make a motion that we request an extension until June 15th.
Second.
All right, Jenny suggested, or made the motion, John seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great. So thank you both for your time and everyone else for their time. So we will continue on with our agenda, which does
Thank
not
you
have
for
too
a
much
very
more.
good discussion.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
So next is announcements, which is simply that the next planning commission meeting is scheduled for Monday, April 20th, 2026 at 7 p.m. in this room. Additional comments from planning commission members. I just have one as a reminder because I was asked to by Adam Boyer, who's not here. But just as a reminder, these planning commission meetings are really for, the benefit and advice of members of the borough, right, residents and taxpayers. And so we often have people that are, drive through the borough, that spend a lot of time here, that like to offer comments. I think it's been the planning commission's purview to allow those when possible. So this is more of just kind of a future FYI that as we have these longer meetings, as we have more comments, we might have to restrict comments, at least at the start, to taxpayers and members and residents of the borough. So hopefully that's not a surprise, but we wanted to just kind of get that on the record so it's not a surprise if we ever have to do that at a future meeting. So that's my only comment. Any other comments from planning commission members? Nope. All right, now public comment, anything not on the agenda or on the agenda? Sue? I mean, it's up to you. you want to project, I think we're fine with that too.
Before these guys leave. When you were talking about the fence along the bike trail, originally there was some kind of fence, because I remember you guys talking about it, but it appears that some of the parking is going to be in the parking garage, the expectation that people will walk over there. And I could see if you don't have a fence, the temptation would be to walk across the tracks. So maybe a fence is a good idea, even just a, 4-foot tall one would help keep people from walking across the tracks.
Great help with temptation there. Thank you. Thank you, Sue. Something to consider for all of us. Any additional public comment? Any motions to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All right, Charles moved to adjourn. John seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Great. Thank you all. Appreciate it. It's a long one.